More than 2 things can be true at once, guys. Open your mind a bit and you'll see. You can have 3, 4, maybe 5 different things about a given topic that are true at once.
When I say they didn't base their evidence on tax accounting principles, what I mean is, did you see them cite the tax instructions at all? He's basically insinuating that because they stopped making posts or tweets about the money they raised, it lines up with the allegation that they are stealing the money. These two are levying allegations of embezzlement and missing funds. Okay, these are felonies. The standard of proof needs to be much higher with this investigation than your normal run-of-the-mill online investigation about the conduct of a transgender activist. Unfortunately, this is
totally outrageous, man. Gleefully just saying that they don't even know is correct, and there's no way they can legitimately claim they know is correct. And they're so confident as well.
They purposely did not research certain things so they can speculate and cast more doubt on the legality of Open Hands conduct.
It's going to be difficult for some of you, because some of you are absolutely certain, without question, that Mutahar and Karl Jobst did nothing wrong in their investigation of the completionist. And I have felt that, and I've said this on stream before, that whilst I do think the completionist did some stuff wrong, like there was talks of embezzlement and there were allegations of criminal activity and stuff like that, it just seemed like excessive.
Okay, that's wonderful.
To me.
But how do I make money off depressed people?
I don't know.
And it's like, whilst obviously not sending money that you've been sent as a charity thing for years is a really fucking bad, terrible fuck up, people were acting like the completionist's intent was to take money from the charity fund for his own pocket. And I just don't think that was ever the case, right? That seemed excessive. And it seemed to primarily just be him not sending the money, which is still bad, but obviously not as bad as like embezzlement or something, right? But obviously, I'm not an accountant. I don't have the knowledge, not expertise, to really assess. Well, the reason I don't think he was trying to take money is he never did. The completionist, as far as I'm aware, did not take a single cent of the charity money into his own pocket from the charity account it ended up in. It was sat there for years and eventually it got sent. And then the other problem, and this really came to my mind when I got this email. So basically the story is, I got an email from this accountant who just super chatted a little while ago, $5, right? And he laid out to me and said, look, I've got this video here. I'm obviously a smaller YouTuber, hasn't got that many views, but I'm an accountant by trade, and they got a bunch of stuff wrong in their reporting of the completionist stuff, right? And I was just thinking back to it, and I'm like, you know, when journalists report on accounting issues, they normally have to rely on like forensic accounting practices by professionals in order to get the right information, to report the correct information. Like, you can't just fucking look at some accounts and go, and look at the law and go, oh yeah, that's embezzlement. Like, you need to actually go through a process in order to do that, right? And I just, you know, it's got me thinking as well, even more so about it. Because I'd obviously had these few doubts and stuff, and I voiced them on stream, and people kind of reacted badly to it, you know? And it's like, okay, well, I don't know enough about it, so whatever. But then it's like, well, it is true that they're not like accountants. So how do they know the ins and outs of this to really make such strong claims of like embezzlement and stuff like that, you know? Like, they were saying some pretty wild stuff in the video. And I think everyone got wrapped up in it at the time. Both Karl Jobst and Mutahar had good reputations at the time. And I think that people just accepted everything that they said without questioning it or without having a second thought, you know? So anyway, this email came at quite a, you know, a good time, because obviously we're talking about this Mutahar stuff. And I've always found that there's been this resistance to really scrutinize or assess what they did with the completionist stuff. It's like, it's settled, it's all dealt with, there's nothing to see there, there's no scrutiny needed, they absolutely covered everything correctly, and there's nothing else to say about it. And I think it's time. I think enough time has passed. And I think also the fact that now Mutahar and Karl have had their own kind of negative dramas that's hurt their credibility. I think it's only fair that we have a little look and a little poke about via this video that this person very kindly sent to me. They put a lot of work into this, I think. Now, he has said himself that it's quite dry. Okay? So, I don't know what this is going to be. Maybe it's too dry. We're going to get into it. We're going to see. I'm sure I'll have a good time with that anyway. It's quite long as well. So if it's not that of interest to you, it's probably not for you. Okay? But I personally am interested in this. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. And also, I do think it's probably going to poke some holes in a story that was just broadly accepted without question at the time. So I think it's interesting for a number of reasons. Without any further ado, let's get into it, okay? So this YouTuber is Accounting and YouTube. Now let's be real, that's not a name that fills you with hope that you're about to watch something crazy entertaining. Let's be realistic about it, okay? Sounds like the kind of thing someone would say with a fucking pocket calculator and like broken glasses with tape on there would say. You know? But let's see. Let's get into it.
It's been just over a year now since the investigation into the Open Hand Foundation was conducted, led by the YouTubers Karl Jobst and Mutahar from Some Ordinary Gamers. Since their original publications, a handful of other content creators have also covered the story.
Okay, immediately, I know this guy is like some sort of numbers Poindexter guy, so I'm like, yep, okay, you listen, Poindexter. If I was in America and I didn't have an accountant and I heard this, I'd be knocking on your door because my fucking finances would be safe with you, I'm sure, okay? Now, this guy has claimed to me that he is a certified, what is it, CPA? Is that certified professional accountant? Is that what it is? But he claims to be an accountant, so he claims to have knowledge and expertise in this area. Now, I've not independently verified his credentials here, so I'm not saying that he is, you know, like definitively to be trusted without question. You know, I'm obviously a layman in this too. I was certified public accountant, okay. But in any case, you know, let's give it a listen and see.
Citing the evidence presented by Karl and Mutahar. Today, as I search the Open Hand Foundation and other related searches on YouTube, I see little to no videos or updates from other creators revisiting this topic or providing much of an update on them. So what does all this actually mean then? I think a substantial amount of time has now passed.
Where was he when the videos dropped? Okay. If this guy's got fucking 58 subs, bro. I don't even know if his channel existed back then. Oh, well, dude. His account didn't exist back then, first of all. And secondly, what the like, dude, some people have got like no conception of how this drama stuff works, right? If you've got a drama like this, where everyone is going in on the completionist, and these guys have got great reputation, there's no way you can put a video out that questions it, and A, it gets traction, and B, even if it does get traction, right, people are going to dismiss it out of hand. So I just don't think it's really relevant to be like, where were you when the video came out? If this video came out when it happened, no one would have fucking watched it. And if they did, they said it was bullshit. So it's just not really a worthwhile point to make. You know? Everyone was eating this up. Mutahar and Karl Jobst in the prime of their respective careers, I would argue. You know, completely beyond reproach. No meaningful controversy associated with them. And it was just accepted without question by many people. Right? And I would even include myself in that. The videos were very convincing, right? I can't remember what I said at the time when I watched it. But I do, you know, at some point, even if it wasn't when I watched the video, I did feel like the, embezzlement claim was excessive. So I did feel like there were claims they were making that were excessive. Even if overall there were some good points I felt that were made. So, you know, I think that it's simultaneously, it was very well received at the time. And also, I don't think there's a world with the circumstances being what they were. It could have gone differently. Like, I just don't think there was a way to meaningfully shift narrative based on how everything was panning out at the time.
And we can start to look back on the evidence Karl and Mutahar presented in their investigation and come to some sort of conclusion about their research and the conduct by Open Hand. So why am I making a video about Open Hand and their alleged conduct? Well, for one, this story piqued my interest when it came to light back in 2023. Just for some background information on myself, I'm a licensed CPA and I've been an accountant for the past 8.5 years. I've mainly worked in the nonprofit sector. I first started as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit organization. I then moved to a public accounting firm where I was responsible for performing audits and completing tax forms for those nonprofits. With my professional experience and expertise, I believe I can offer some nuance and context that was absent in the original investigation. I remember watching Mutahar's video
1.5 times speed. You got somewhere to be? You busy? You got somewhere to be, have you?
He asks for an accountant with some experience to look into this.
I want everyone professional in the industry to look into this, because this is very... Again, when I said that this raises red flags to any CPA or accountant that I've shown, there's a reason for that.
Ask and you shall receive, my friend.
Right.
Just to get a few miscellaneous things out of the way, if you haven't noticed this already, this video is going to be long. I've gone back and forth in my head whether I should break this video up into different parts in an effort to make it more digestible, but I just can't. I actually don't think it's possible. There are just too many things that were absent in Karl and Mutahar's original investigation, and breaking those things apart in different videos could result in a story that just seems disjointed or disconnected. Also, I'm obviously not a content creator, so I apologize that the visuals of this video will be kind of stale and static.
Bro, this guy, okay. I'll get this guy on to have a chat. I think we could have a very fun conversation, honestly. Oh, dude, I tell you what would be fun as well. I could also ask him about the IRS stuff with, what's his face? That fucking lefty guy. Innuendo Studios. I could ask him about that too. That would be a great combo. We could talk about that as well.
And I may sound a bit robotic as I read from my script, so I apologize. I hope the information that's enclosed represents its merit and not any of the visuals. However, I guarantee by the end of this video, you will learn a thing or two. This video has actually been pretty difficult to make for...
I think it's more of Jerard being a liar rather than a malicious charity fraudster. Nope! Wrong! Dude, there were tons of videos at the time that were calling him fraudulent. No, that's not true at all, dude. It wasn't just about him being a liar. Bro, I would wager if you went and typed in the completionist fraud into YouTube, it would come up with loads of videos with loads of views calling him fraudulent.
For two reasons. First off, I'm gonna have to talk about Jerard, and he is obviously a rather disliked figure nowadays, for good reason. There's no doubt about it that Jerard lied to potentially millions of people regarding certain things with OpenHand.
Brilliant.
These are lies by Jerard. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
All the money goes to the Open Hand Foundation, an organization that we started in honor of my mom, and all that money goes to dementia research. We don't touch any of it. We just work with the people who do need the money, and we help them do their thing. All bits, all donations, all super chats, all YouTube memberships, basically anything that's tied to donating or subscribing.
Yes, I remember this. Yeah, yeah. Because this wasn't true, and some of this was used for, I think, Shinji pointed it out. Some of this was used for operational costs.
Okay, that's
so
wonderful.
That's not true.
But how do I make
right? You have to. You can't say that if you're going to use it for
I
operational
mainly
costs,
watch you
right?
and not Gay Riddler.
Thank you for the super chats. So this guy is not just saying he did nothing wrong. He is still giving criticism for what I think arguably absolutely deserves criticism.
Being in a financial way to us is going to charity. We're not touching any of it. It's all going for a good cause.
Every single time that he said that OpenHand doesn't touch any of the money generated by Indieland, this is a lie. At every single point throughout this controversy, Jerard was terrible. He was misleading, he was dishonest, he displayed a lack of leadership. He implicitly stated that he breached his responsibility as a board of director. He displayed a poor understanding of his own organization. He was honestly just awful. I truly can't think of one positive thing to say about how he responded to this.
Became a member. Time for Summeranch celebrates 5 months of membership. We need a video engineer take on this.
Very true. Thank you for the membership. Okay, I think that I imagine what he's probably going to argue is, like, obviously there's a difference between fraud, the layman's understanding of fraud, and legal allegations of fraud, or like embezzlement, or something like that, I think is the point that he's making. Bro, do you understand? God, okay. How do I make you understand this? Right? I don't know how to make you understand this. Obviously, someone could still do something wrong, and you can still report on it badly. Right? You can still say things that are incorrect, and still report on information incorrectly. And this is why, dude, God, just guys, this is the classic issue. Two things can be true at once, okay? Not only one thing has to be true for any given topic. multiple things. In fact, guys, this is really going to blow your mind. Multiple things can be true at once. More than two. More than two things can be true at once, guys. Open your mind a bit and you'll see. You can have 3, 4, maybe 5 different things about a given topic that are true at once.
I cannot defend his lies, and I would not even try. Karl and Mutahar did a great job calling him out for not donating the charity money. They did the right thing by calling him out on his lies when he made statements to the public about organizations that OpenHand worked with. They did the right thing by calling his bullshit on his public statements that OpenHand doesn't touch any of the money generated from IndieLand. I agree with all of that, and I do think Jerard got what he deserved for those lies. Jerard's poor conduct was alleged to have been considered charity fraud. This video is not going to dive into the allegations of charity fraud. The reason being is I believe that's more of a legal issue and less of an accounting related one, so it's not my expertise.
Okay, that makes
Do
sense.
Jerard's lies about not donating the money mean he committed charity fraud? Does OpenHand and Jerard lying about working with certain organizations constitute charity fraud? I honestly have no idea, and I hope it's something that someone with experience in the field of law will be interested in tackling. I understand that there's going to be people who just do not give a shit what's in this video and are going to think that even if Karl and Mutahar misled them, it doesn't matter because Jerard and OpenHand got what they deserve.
Yes, that's you retards that don't realise that multiple things can be true at once. What does it matter if they misreported stuff? He still did bad things. Well, the point is that you will accept people saying things to you that are not necessarily true or is outside of their area of expertise without prefacing because you just want the person to be bad. Like, stop doing that. Like, dude, just literally stop doing that. Like, bro, it's not fucking hard, is it? Just literally stop doing it. Just go, oh, okay, well, maybe even if someone is bad, they can still be misrepresented or lied about or badly reported on.
For lying as much as they did. If that's the case, this video isn't for you and you just got back an hour and a half of your time. You're welcome. The second thing that makes this video challenging is that a handful of the info in it revolves around nonprofit tax accounting, and honestly, no person comes to YouTube for that shit. To be specific, this video will be addressing the accounting research, evidence, and calculations presented by Karl and Mutahar that led them to claim that money had been embezzled, pocketed, or was generally missing. My goal is to examine the evidence presented by Karl and Mutahar from
Well-paid professional makes a long video for a 23 sub channel. Surely it's not been paid for by the completionist. Surely he was just bored. I'm hoping that's just a retarded comment because this guy is just massively fucking chastised and criticised the completionist. And even said he thought he got what he deserved coming to him. This doesn't seem to be about exonerating the completionist. This seems more so to be about, look, the completionist did a bunch of really bad shit that he deservedly got criticised for. And there's some aspects I can't address because it's a legal issue. But there's still things that they got wrong in their reporting, and I know because of my experience as an accountant.
From the perspective of an accountant and come to some sort of conclusion on all of it. A majority of the
The line between fraud is simple. Misappropriation of funds by spending that money elsewhere is a crime. No spend means it's non-illegal mismanagement of funds. No funds were pocketed or removed.
Thank you for the $10. Yeah, I'm always like, dude, I think if something is clear cut, right? Then it's fine to say, oh, they committed this illegal act. If you see a video of someone shooting someone in the street, right? I mean, obviously, that I guess you could have context that makes it self-defense or something, right? But I think there's probably some point where you can go, you know, that is that crime. But there's some crimes that are more complex than people give it credit for. And so they'll just say, they'll say, you know, they'll say like, oh, this is fraud. And they mean it as a layman's perspective. And that's fine if you want to call it fraud from a layman's perspective. But then there's obviously a difference between me thinking something is fraud and it legally being fraud. And obviously there's certain criteria it has to hit to even be open to investigation, let alone prosecution for fraud.
discussion will be around Mutahar's research and evidence, since he was the one who did the deep dive, and Karl just relied on his research to make his questionable claims. With that being said, I don't want to make you sit down.
What is this?
Make his
I'm doing a major follow-up vid. I think that family is going to jail. Bro, what? This is crazy, dude. Yeah, I just read the context. I definitely, at the very least, heavily implied he embezzled money, which he did. Dude, under what definition of embezzlement, even like a layman's definition, did he embezzle money? It's just such an absurd claim to make.
Questionable claims. With that being said, I don't want to make you sit down for a 90-minute video without at least having an idea what we will...
That fruity dude, they wanted you to report this to the IRS. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was overstated. I mean, it's clearly just over-embellished and overstated.
Come to learn by the end of it. So if I had 1 minute to give you an idea of what we're about to look into, you're going to come to learn that Karl and Mutahar's accounting research, evidence, and calculations were bad. They lacked any application of actual tax accounting principles and were not based on tax accounting guidelines set forth by the Internal Revenue Code. Additionally, the evidence to support their claims is not reliable and does not meet any standard of proof in terms of tax accounting. Lastly, I'll showcase that both Karl and Mutahar were kind of in over their heads with this investigation and didn't exactly do the best job with their research. You can draw your own conclusions with what all of this means by the end of the video. In order to help you understand why their research and body of evidence was as bad as it was, I'm gonna have to talk about nonprofit tax accounting shit for probably 20 to 30 minutes. And I know that sounds really fucking boring, but there's truly no other way. The only way to understand what they overlooked and what they got wrong is to start...
I guess in order to truly go after Mutahar, we're gonna have to learn about accounting. This is like learning about coding to talk about the pirate software shit.
With how this investigation should have been approached, because without that, their mistakes may not be clear. We'll use all of that info and relate it to OpenHand along the way, and then we'll tie it all into Karl and Mutahar's evidence. Taxes are complicating, guys. It's really not as simple as just punching numbers into a calculator.
Because without receipts, our claims have no validity. You cannot take what I say at surface value. If I don't provide receipts, you, as a viewer, should question me on any statement that I make. That's just logical.
If you want to see the receipts, stick around. If you don't know the background of the allegations made against OpenHand, here's a quick synopsis. If you do already know this, you can skip to the timestamp on the screen. Back in November 2023, both Karl and Mutahar published videos discussing the questionable conduct of a nonprofit called the OpenHand Foundation.
Off depressed people.
Oh wait, that saying that is Jobst and
that is a good clip,
the story, no matter how shit their conclusions were. I'd kiff we would know about it if not.
Silent but Dudley, thank you for the $5. Thank you. See, look, Silent but Dudley's willing to have an open mind. Why don't you try, guys?
The purpose of the OpenHand Foundation was to help provide funding and resources toward research to find a cure for frontotemporal dementia, or FTD. There were reasonable concerns made about OpenHand because while they'd been saying for almost a decade that they were working with and assisting certain organizations linked to dementia research, it was discovered by Karl and Mutahar that this information was entirely untrue, and Karl and Mutahar published videos highlighting these lies and their questionable conduct, in which they were specifically alleging that charity fraud was committed by OpenHand. These were entirely reasonable concerns to question. Why had OpenHand been saying for years that they work with all of these organizations and are making progress toward dementia research when they were not? This clearly lit a fire at the OpenHand Foundation, and shortly after their videos were published, they donated a substantial amount of their stockpiled cash, finally following through on what they'd said they'd been doing for years. However, only a few short weeks after those initial videos were published, Karl and Mutahar took their allegations one step further and claimed that they further investigated OpenHand's tax filings and came to the conclusion that there was a discrepancy in the amount of revenue that was reported. These additional videos withhold the allegations that OpenHand and members of the Khalil family were embezzling.
So it's almost like they got like fucking like, you know, big views off of it. I mean, I don't know what the research process was. Maybe it was all done ahead of time. But it's because obviously calling them out, like saying they did not give the money to charity and Jerard has lied about this. That's fine, obviously. That's fine, correct. That's what happened. but it feels like they kind of went over and beyond what their level of knowledge was, and then ended up in an area where they just don't have the ability to fucking say much about it. Because, dude, just think about it yourself, right? When I think of it yourself, fucking Karl Jobst is a speedrunning YouTuber, and Mutahar is Mutahar. Like, what credentials have you got to do forensic accounting of an organization to assess whether or not they've done their accounting correctly? You know, it's very, like, you know, a lot of hubris there. A lot of hubris, I think. Like, I just don't think they ever were in a position to reasonably investigate the tax aspects of this.
Embezzling money, or that money was generally missing, casting additional doubt on the legality of the nonprofit organization that is OpenHand. Like I said earlier, I will not be addressing the allegations of charity fraud. I don't believe it's within my expertise. This video will specifically address the allegations of embezzlement and missing funds. In Karl and Mutahar's videos, they went over several years of OpenHand's tax filings. I'm mainly going to focus on OpenHand's 2019 year, since it's the year we have the most comprehensive information on, but I'm going to be referencing other years as well. Additionally, a majority of my discussion will focus on tax and accounting principles that were consistently overlooked in every year that they examined, rather than on specific calculations, so repeating the same points for each year would be redundant. Because tax accounting is so convoluted, I'm going to break down what I think are the 4 most important aspects as they relate to OpenHand's tax filing. We're first going to start with a discussion on financial statement reporting versus tax reporting. We'll then discuss public charities versus private foundations. We'll move on to program services versus fundraising activities. And lastly, we'll discuss program revenues and fundraising revenues and how they're reported and calculated in a tax form. Let's start with the discussion on financial statement reporting versus tax reporting. This is actually one of the more obvious mistakes that Karl and Mutahar made, because they failed to understand that there is a distinction between financial statement reporting and tax reporting. In his video, when Mutahar tells you that all your revenues are everything that you made before any consideration of expenses.
If you have, let's say the golf event cost $60,000 to run, right? And it cost, and they made like what, 30,000? So $60,000 to run the event, but they made 30 grand. It wouldn't matter, okay? Because you would still see the $30,000 show up as part of the revenue, right? And the $60,000, if they chose to bill themselves, or if they chose to take costs out of the charity, would be reflective. It would show up in the cost sections. Remember, revenue is all the money you've made before you start factoring in, oh shit, it cost me more to run it, so now the revenue that I made, I'm actually going into the loss, okay?
This statement is more indicative of financial statement reporting, and it doesn't always reflect how tax reporting works. A key thing you must understand is that financial statement reporting and tax reporting follow 2 different sets of standards. Financial statement reporting follows standards called GAAP, G-A-A-P, which stands for Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. GAAP is a set of standardized rules, guidelines, and procedures used in the United States to prepare and present financial statements. GAAP accounting is regulated by a body called the Financial Accounting Standards Board. Tax reporting does not follow the reporting standards spelled out by GAAP. They instead follow guidelines set primarily by the Internal Revenue Code, which is enforced by the Internal Revenue Service. The reason there are differences...
Okay. So is this saying that the accounting that you do within your business is different to the accounting that you end up filing with the tax service? So you are going to have things that appear on your business accounting that aren't necessarily reflected when you report it into tax. But that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with that. It's just there's different standards you have to adhere to, so it's done in a different way. Right, okay. Got it. By the way, Q, I believe, is some sort of financial person. I mean, obviously, they're a chatter, so don't take that as read. But they normally seem to have quite educated takes on this sort of thing. So they're like my, you know, The equivalent of one of the coding nerds from when I was covering the fucking stuff, okay? Not an accountant, that's fine, but, you know, I'm just... You're like a sort of, you know, a beacon. You're like a beacon that I could look at and go, okay, well, I'll go with that. I'll go with that. So, yeah, okay.
Between financial statement reporting and tax reporting is because they serve different purposes.
Right, yeah.
Financial statement reporting aims to provide a clear and accurate representation of a company's financial position for end users and readers of financial statements, whereas tax accounting is focused on adhering to IRS regulations to calculate taxable income and obligations. Tax accounting specifically for nonprofits focuses...
Okay, that makes sense. Because the IRS is only concerned with how much tax you owe. That's the consideration. That's what they want to understand. But within your business, there's going to be other things that you're concerned with reporting, because potentially for shareholders, say, or interested parties, whatever the case may be. Okay, that makes sense. Right, I think I'm on board with this. So, is everyone on board? Does everyone understand? I think I get it. I think I get it.
On insure obligations. Tax accounting specifically for nonprofits focuses on ensuring compliance with IRS requirements while maintaining their tax-exempt status. Although nonprofits are not typically taxed on their primary mission-related income, they still must follow specific tax rules and file annual returns. Compared to financial statement accounting, tax accounting is much more rigid and governed by specific rules. Because financial statement reporting and tax reporting follow different reporting standards, there can be differences in the reported income on a set of financial statements relative to the tax filing. Let's take a quick look at an example of this just so you can see this for yourselves. Let's take a look at the December 31st, 2023 audited financial statements for the International Food Policy Research Institute. We're going to scroll down to a page called the Statement of Activities. This is more commonly known as the income statement or a profit and loss statement, where we can find their total support and revenue. One important thing to know about this audited financial statement is that these numbers are in the thousands, meaning that this isn't 111,879, it's 111,879,000.
Bro, this is autism slot. Bro, I've got to be honest with you. It is extremely obnoxious that everyone, I wouldn't even include myself, I mean, I can't remember how I reacted to it, but I'll just say that I did gobble it up, okay? For whatever, I don't want to... I gobbled it up. Lots of other people loads of people gobble this up when it's some fucking uneducated fucking YouTubers doing this. But now someone who claims to be an accountant, not independently verified, so I don't know, is doing the same thing and kind of like going against that. All of a sudden it's, oh, this is stupid, this is boring. Oh, sorry, it's not some fucking YouTuber fucking pulling the wool over your eyes and saying shit that isn't necessarily true. It's so fucking obnoxious, bro. You were willing to gobble this up when it was in a 40-minute video, allegedly incorrectly, but now someone's correcting the record, it's just boring and you're not interested. It's fucking outrageous, dude. It's literally outrageous to me.
Total support and revenue for the year 2023, they have as $111,879,000. When we go to the International Food Policy Research Institute's 990 filing for 2023, we can actually see on line 12 right here that they reported $112,149,831 of revenue. We can actually compare the prior year as well and see that there are differences between them. So prior year's 990 revenue was $102,800,000. And if we look at the financial statements, they reported $102,528,000. This is actually a pretty well-known thing amongst professionals in this industry, and it's kind of why I assume that Karl and Mutahar didn't know this. I'll probably say this a few more times throughout the video, but nonprofit tax accounting is complicating. It's not just about punching numbers in a calculator.
It's got a little music if you're interested.
This upcoming section is single-handedly the most complicated aspect of this entire situation. I cannot stress that enough, so pay attention.
But how do I make money off depressed people?
Mutahar, the same CEO who doesn't like charity tax write-offs because they're shitty, even though they let you donate more to charity. He has no clue.
True, Raz. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you. Thank you.
In Jerard's response video to the accusations, he made everyone aware that while OpenHand was instructed to file a 990-PF, they were considered a public charity in the eyes of the IRS since 2015. He showed this document as proof. However, it's important to distinguish that their status as a public charity via this letter is only conditional until they fully complete their 60-month period, which is known as the public support test. In short, any newly incorporated tax-exempt entity will undergo this exact same 60-month public support test. The idea is that the IRS wants to generate significant data to prove whether the tax-exempt organization should be classified as a public charity or a private foundation. If after the 5-year period, more than 33 1/3% of the support that they receive comes from the public, then they will convert to a public charity. If they fail to meet this requirement, they will be considered a private foundation and operate as such. The thing about public charities and private foundations are that they function entirely differently. They're structured differently, they're funded differently, and they serve entirely different purposes. Public charities exist to provide support to the public, and they can earn revenues through things like contributions, grants from private foundations, grants from governments, as well as program revenues for the services they provide. Private foundations essentially support charitable organizations by providing them with financial support. Private foundations are also usually funded by a small number of people, someone like a family, for example, or a company, or a group of individuals who all share a common goal. When OpenHand became a tax-exempt organization in 2014, it makes sense that they considered themselves a private foundation, as their whole purpose was to donate funds to other charitable organizations. They weren't...
Oh, I see. So they want to be a private foundation, right. So by being a private foundation, they can then give money to a public charity, and that is why they wanted to be a private foundation, right? Is that what it is? This might be confusing to Chud, but foundation usually means something small and owned, especially by a family in the US. Right, okay.
Providing a service or good to the public. The problem they ran into, and why I assume they requested to terminate their private status only 1 year into their existence, is that their funding sources were not typical of a private foundation. The individual or organization that initially...
Oh, so a private foundation is meant to be like you get little bits, you basically get like small donations from lots of people. Is that right? And then the charity actually does the action, and the private foundations can fund the charity. The opposite. Oh my god, dude! I can't even understand it. Take me back to the fucking coding. So I got it the wrong way around. Oh no, of course it is, yeah, because, dude, I'm such a fucking moron. A public charity is going to get a little bits and pieces from loads of people. Private foundation is going to get big chunks of money from less people.
Try to fool me and say this is entertaining. This boring dude could just spare us the lecture and just stick to Indian jokes.
Thank you for the super chat. You're welcome to tune out at any point. Okay, just click the X button if you're not interested. But thanks for the super chat. I'm watching this video. There's literally nothing that can stop me now from watching this video. So if you're not interested, you're going to have to fuck off because I'm watching this video. A private foundation is like my family and our mates with money band together to use that money to forward a cause we all care deeply about. More than people who ship in 5 bob, for example. I see. Okay.
Actually funds a private foundation, typically determines its mission, selects the board members, decides how the funds are invested, and chooses the recipients of those funds.
Right.
The Khalil family didn't fund OpenHand. OpenHand's funding came from the Gulf fundraiser and public contributions from the years 2014 to 2017.
Why are you struggling so much? This is straightforward. It's going to function exactly like US tax code 1496.0.0.2. So if you know that one, this should be very simple. Yes, exactly.
And then the Gulf fundraiser indie land, and public contributions from 2018 and so forth. So, we know from the evidence that Jerard provided that although they are seen as a conditional public charity, the IRS wants them to file the form for a private foundation. So now comes the confusing question of this whole situation. When it comes to OpenHand filing their taxes, what standard of tax guidelines are they supposed to follow? Do they follow the instructions of the 990-PF for a private foundation because that's the form the IRS told them to file? Or should they follow the guidelines of a 990 because they are conditionally considered a public charity? During this 60-month period, the IRS is essentially giving OpenHand a chance to prove that it meets the public support test. Until that period is successfully completed, the organization is still treated as a private foundation for most tax compliance and reporting purposes, including the forms they must file. This means they default to private foundation rules for filing, even while operating like a public charity. The benefit of this period is that the private foundations are not subject to...
Yes, I was on a show on YouTube. I spoke about it earlier, if you want to know the full story and my frustrations. But obviously, it's fixed now. I'm back on YouTube. We're laughing. And we're finding out about tax. Let's go. Let's fucking have at it.
Certain excise taxes or penalties. They can accept tax-deductible contributions that an individual taxpayer can use as deductions on their taxes. And it's not subject to the 5% payout rule, which was one of the things Mutahar brought up in one of his videos. The fact that OpenHand has to file a 990-PF but are operating like a public charity is what makes this scenario so confusing. A public charity is required to detail a breakout of expenses, a schedule detailing their revenue, a detailed breakout of their public support, detail regarding their programs and the services they provide, a breakout of fundraising activities and events.
Okay. Right, I think it's clicking for me now. So basically, the OpenHand Foundation was in this kind of limbo state. And it was uncertain as to whether it was a public charity or private foundation. And what it meant is that because they're in this limbo state, it was like there were because they were like almost half considered a public charity, there is like an expectation they're going to fill out documents related to being a public charity. But they didn't, but that's because they were in this limbo state. And I'm guessing that that is like reasonable from an accounting perspective, even though it looks unusual to a layman. Or they're adhering to the IRS standard. They're adhering to an IRS standard because they would rather be seen as a foundation. So that doesn't mean they've done anything wrong necessarily. This is all within the rules and the laws of accounting and tax stuff. It just can look odd to a layman that doesn't know the intricacies of it. Oh, okay. So the IRS wanted them to be private. They wanted to be public. Oh, dude, fuck it. Okay. I'm more confused now. I thought I had it. Did I have it or not? I don't know. It's messy. Right. So to make it even more simplistic... Oh, I did it. Okay. To make it more simplistic... This is one of those very awkward, difficult, complicated accounting situations that some organizations find themselves in. They're not doing anything wrong or illegal or breaking any tax laws here. It just looks unusual if you don't know about accounting when you look at it. But if you're an accountant looking at this, well, you probably see money bags because you're like, I could make some money off of helping these people out with their accounting, right? But you're going to be thinking, oh yeah, okay, this is a very complex situation. But you're going to understand that they're not doing anything wrong, but a layman might, because especially if you've got a YouTuber telling you it's really wrong. Yeah, it was a great, yes, that's a better way of putting it. The organization existed in a grey area between the two, and they were adhering to what they were trying to adhere to the guidelines that are set to them by like the IRS, right?
Other things. A 990PF doesn't require any of that information, at least in equivalent detail, which is one of the reasons why OpenHand's 990 filings look like they're lacking information. And I think it's one of the reasons why Karl and Mutahar was suspicious about them in the first place.
Right.
A 990PF doesn't even have certain guidelines that would apply to OpenHand, like how to calculate fundraising revenue, because private foundations.
No, it didn't. It's just the IRS standard. Oh my god, lol. Are you an accountant? What's that? What does that mean? Are you a completionist hater that wants to just believe he definitely did everything wrong, or are you saying that even what I'm saying is unreasonable?
Foundations don't host fundraiser events normally. Clarifying the standards that OpenHand must follow is key, as it's directly linked to the revenue errors made by Karl and Mutahar. The golf event and Indieland are considered fundraising events, and we're going to discuss that in more detail later. Private foundations can.
Oh, I work in charitable law, and I'm just saying it wasn't a grey area, it's just how the IRS works. Oh, sorry, okay, yeah, no, I see. Grey area suggests there's some sort of potential impropriety, but it's uncertain because it's grey. So it's wrong to say it's a grey area. It's more just like they fell into the gap of the complexity of IRS guidelines around this particular issue. Is that more fair, do you think? It was a transitory period. So it was in a transitory period. Okay. Right, okay. Right. Okay. Well, I'm obviously trusting what you're saying. I mean, you know, it's difficult because obviously you can say anything in chat, but I think based on what I've heard, because yeah, grey area suggests impropriety of some kind, but there wasn't necessarily impropriety, it's just very complicated. The IRS have got certain rules and guidelines, and they were making what seems to be a good faith effort to adhere to it as they're in this transitory period.
Okay, that's wonderful. But how do I make money off depressed people?
No, they got the 990 PF from cause the signatory in line 23G in IRS Bill Struthers versus Bob et al. In 1956 for the transitory period in Boolean macaroni.
Thank you, Poo Poo Doo Doo, for the super chats.
Host fundraiser events, but they are subject to certain restrictions and compliance regulations.
Grey area loophole,
Okay,
what's the
that's
difference?
wonderful. But how do I make money off depressed people?
Good one, Chud. Are you an accountant? +2 on the anti-Semitic porky pig joke.
Thank you for the tip, appreciate it. Stylo, very good. Very good. Well, the thing is like, the idea here is that there's an adherence to complex IRS guidelines and rules. And there's no grey area or even a loophole. This is the IRS is saying this is what you must do, and they're attempting to adhere to the guidelines the IRS have set out in a transitory period between being the two different types of these organisations, right? So to suggest there's loophole or grey area, is to say that is to suggest it's impropriety when there doesn't seem to be any impropriety here, at least based on what this guy that claims to be an accountant is saying.
Also, since fundraiser money comes from the public, private foundations try to avoid getting most of their funding that way so they can keep their status as a private foundation. Because they generally don't host fundraisers, there's no way to account for them in a 990PF. There aren't even any instructions in the 990PF that will guide us on how to account for them. So there are going to be times that we need to consult the 990 instructions, which are the instructions that a public charity follows, and apply them to OpenHand's 990PF filing.
Okay, more music. Let's get some key jangling. Come on.
One of the most important discussions we need to have are the classifications of revenues that a tax-exempt organization can recognize. Understanding these will help us understand why it's classified the way it is, and therefore how it should be calculated and reported in a tax filing. So let's start with program services, okay? What is a program service? Citing the 990PF instructions, program services are mainly those activities that the reporting organization was created to conduct and that, along with any activities begun later, form the basis of the organization's current exemption from tax. Some easy examples are things like a food bank holding a food drive and charging for the food that they offer, admissions to a concert or other performing arts event or to a museum, a hospital conducting medical research, a church or hospitality charging for travel fees associated with going on a religious pilgrimage, things like that.
Okay.
Remember when I said earlier that public charity...
So the business has got an expense to do something, and they're not just saying, give us money because we need money to do charitable events. They're saying, pay us a fee to help cover the costs of this. Or something, is that right? React harder, dude. I'm doing my best, okay? Grey area. It's a grey area, guys. It's a grey area.
Admissions to a concert or other performing arts event or to a museum, a hospital conducting medical research, a church or hospitality charging for travel fees associated with going on a...
Oh! It's expenditure that they make that was in the... So it's money they spend that's within the realms of what they're doing as the organization. So if they went and spent money on, I don't know, a massive fuck-off TV to watch a big movie on and fucking it be really big in the front room, that obviously wouldn't be permissible. But if you spent a lot of money on going to some fucking mission somewhere because you're trying to spread Christianity, that would be allowed, even though it, you know, right? So yeah, you don't pay tax on that. So so that is it. But if you're doing something in relation to the mission of the organization, that's a tax-exempt expenditure. I think that's what he's saying here. Amen.
Religious pilgrimage, things like that. Remember when I said earlier that public charities support the public and private foundations support public charities or other charitable organizations? One of the ways they do that is through their programs. From a fundamental perspective, what this means is the beneficiary of a program service for a public charity must be the public, and the beneficiary of a program service for a private foundation must be another public charity or charitable organization.
Right,
or it can be an individual person as well. The complication with this definition and how it relates to open hand is they don't really provide a service to a charitable organization. The only activities that open hand is involved in that could constitute a program service is the golf event and Indieland. However, the beneficiary of these two activities is open hand themselves and not a public charity. If Open Hand were to run a program, the beneficiary would have to be a public charity that operates in the field of dementia or dementia research. Additionally, Open Hand can't run a program in which they are their own beneficiaries. That just doesn't make sense for a tax-exempt organization. Just to provide what an actual program service is for a private foundation, we're going to take a look at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and walk this out step by step using their tax filings. Citing their 2023 990PF filing, we're looking at a section called the Summary of Direct Charitable Activities. I'm just going to read the second activity that's listed here, and it states, the primary focus is on ensuring that all students, especially Black, Latino, and low-income students...
Oh, bit of DEI! Bit of Bill Gates DEI. Let's go! Especially the Black individuals. Make sure the Black people get the money from this, please. Mainly.
Have an opportunity to earn a degree or credential that prepares them for a successful career and life. We can find more information on this exact program on the Gates Foundation website. Lastly, if we go back to their 990PF filing, we can look into one of the public charities they gave money to support this activity. Let's take a look at the Alder Graduates School of Education, because the funding purpose is titled K-12, so it's more than likely for this educational purpose. If we now go to their 990 form, we can see that their mission as a public charity is to recruit and educate excellent teachers and leaders who reflect our school's communities. Notice how the specific program that they fund has a very specific goal, a very specific...
So the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a private foundation that then can take money they get and give it to a public charity as a grant, and then that transaction is tax exempt because it's going towards the furtherance of their goals or aim as a private foundation. So that's the process. Right. And then in the case of the Open Hand Foundation, well, they've not given any money to any charity. It's just sat in an account. So what are they doing that's comparable to that process? And that's the issue. Finally, Chud is reacting harder. Dude, I'm trying to figure this out, dude. A private foundation must be in support of another public charity, but Open Hand supporters themselves, so that may be improper. Wouldn't have thought of that. Right, okay.
Target of people, a very specific initiative, and it directly benefits a public charity. This is what defines a program service. One attribute of a program service is it specifically constitutes an exchange transaction where the nonprofit provides something of value by a product or through a service that contributes to the organization's non-exempt mission. Another key concept...
Because obviously otherwise, you could have a private foundation that has a bunch of money and it gives $1 million to some guy, and they could be like, yeah, that's, you know, that's Johnny, and he's doing something with that. And then you look at it and he's just spent it on a car or something, right? And you're like, what's that for? Oh, just for me to drive around in to look cool. Well, no, that's not legitimate. Like, that's not allowed. Like, you've broken the rules, you've broken the law. And there'd probably be some consequence for that.
Concept that needs to be understood is just
account on YouTube. I gotta be honest with you. You were right to be concerned about people. Basically, everyone's got ADHD on the internet nowadays. So some people have struggled a bit with this. I'm actually finding it quite interesting, and many in chat are also finding it interesting. But there's some complainers. You'll always find this. There's people that complain, but they still keep watching. They can't resist. They can't resist the tax information.
Just because an activity raises funds, it doesn't automatically classify it as a program service. You can find this information...
If you fundraise for one specific person, that's fine, actually. You just need to disclose it, and they can't be directly connected to the charity. But then but surely if you do that, it's got to be linked to your goal. Like, you could give $1 million to someone with cancer if you're a cancer charity. And then you've given them a grant. You give them, it's like a grant. You give them a grant, right? But surely there'd need to be some justification for giving a grant. Otherwise, you could do money laundering and shit through these kind of organizations.
Information on the general 990 instructions, and it states, do not report a fundraising activity as a program service accomplishment unless it substantially is related to the accomplishment of the organization's exempt purposes other than by raising funds.
In fact, I'm sure there's instances where private foundations have done exactly that. They've given money to someone and it's been in an illegitimate fashion, not related to the foundation's goals or mission, whatever, and then that's obviously then causing problems, right? And there's probably like money laundering that's happened. Like there's a whole thing about these like massive fucking like foundations doing shady shit, etc., etc. Yeah. Okay. Okay,
does
sorry.
report a fundraising activity as a program service accomplishment unless it substantially is related to the accomplishment of the organization's exempt purposes other than by raising funds. Let's dissect this statement because it's really important to understand the differences between a program service and a fundraiser event, because they do have similarities. The most important words in this statement are other than by raising funds. What this means is just because an activity or event raises funds or generates a profit, it doesn't make it a program service. A lot of program services and fundraising activities raise funds and generate profits. This allows the organization to know that they can continue funding the activity or the event. As long as the event or activity is profitable, then the activity can carry on. So just because an activity raises funds doesn't make it a program service. What makes a program service is exactly what we said earlier, an activity of an organization that accomplishes its exempt purpose. You need to separate the aspect of raising funds.
Oh, so yeah, if you're one of these organizations and you do we're gonna fucking do a crazy thing and raise loads of money. All right, what am I going to do? I was going to make a point, and dude, oh my god, oh my god, I've lost it.
From the activity or event, and determine whether the activity or event itself advances the mission and purpose of the non-exempt organization.
So the fundraising could be anything to raise money for the organization. It could be literally anything you want to do. But the other thing, it's got to be a specific thing related to the mission of what you're trying to achieve. So you could do you could shave your head for the purposes of doing a fundraiser. And that's fine, you're raising money that way. But the other thing, you've got to be doing something related to the mission. And you can even charge people money to do that. So you're raising money for your charity, because obviously there's expenditure, but you can offset that by charging people money for going on a mission somewhere. So you are fundraising off of that, but that specifically has to be related to the mission at the other end of what you do at the other end of it. I think is what it is.
Let's relate these definitions to Open Hand's overall mission. As a reminder, their mission is to provide funding and research.
Yeah, a golf tournament for a food bank is the fundraiser. The donation to the food bank is the program service. And because of that, their revenues are calculated differently because the fundraiser activity has nothing to do with progressing their mission. Right, so the funds that are spent progressing the mission are scrutinized differently. Or the revenue they generate from progressing the mission is considered differently to revenue they generate from a fundraiser. So a person gives $100 to help to go on a trip. That income is assessed differently to someone going, I want to support this charity for this fundraiser, here's $100. Is that what it is? And the rules are different for that and shit?
Resources toward research to find a cure for FTD. Although their mission states an intent to provide funding, this cannot be used to determine whether an activity qualifies as a program service or a fundraiser, as the instructions explicitly direct us to disregard whether the activity raises funds or not. What this means is we need to look at the specific attributes of Open Hand's activities and determine if they help promote research to find a cure for FTD. If an activity doesn't get classified as a program service, it will very likely be classified as a fundraiser. We can't find a definition.
Bro, I heard Chud in the beginning even nail that. My glasses are broken and are taped up. Bro, dude. See, look, accounting on YouTube likes the banter. Let's go. Great to hear. I'll drop you an email back after my stream here. But yeah, I think if we can arrange time to talk, I've got another tax-related topic that I think you'd be interested in commenting on too. So it should be fun.
For what comprises a fundraiser in the 990PF instructions, because like I said, private foundations generally don't conduct them. So we need to resort to the general 990 instructions, and it states, A fundraising activity is an activity undertaken to induce potential donors to contribute money, securities, services, materials, facilities, other assets, or time. They include publicizing and conducting fundraising campaigns, maintaining donor mailing lists, conducting fundraising events, preparing and distributing fundraising manuals, instructions, and other materials, professional fundraising services, and conducting other activities involved with soliciting contributions from individuals.
Right, this guy seems pretty straight-laced, okay? I don't think he's going to start making racial jokes. Guys, not everyone is an antisocial racist freak like you and somewhat me, okay? Let's just remember that there's more normal people out there. Right.
Foundations, governments, and others. Fundraising activities and events function similarly to program services, at least in the sense where there's an exchange between the organization and the participant. The biggest difference between a program service and a fundraising activity is the activity or event that makes up the fundraiser doesn't exactly contribute to the organization's non-exempt mission.
Yes.
Even though the organization is the beneficiary.
Right.
Just to offer a real-world example of a fundraiser.
Yeah, oh my god, it's all connecting. It's all connecting. Right? So if you were doing research and granted money to someone to do research on something, that fulfills it. Oh, dude, no, I had it, bro. I had it. Even though, the money that you raise from the fundraising is, I mean, obviously there's, it didn't end up for years going to them, but that's besides the point. You raise money from fundraising, and that money then goes towards the organization, and even though that's happening, it's still classified as a fundraiser. Because the initial incident which raises that money is not itself linked to the goal, because it could be like a golf tournament or any crazy thing you can think of that's unrelated to the mission of your organization. How do you think you're going to explain it better than the guy who made the video? I'm trying to simplify it because there's a lot of idiots watching, okay? I'm doing my best here. I'm trying to make it simple for myself. Let me
to the organization's non-exempt mission, even though the organization is the beneficiary. Just to offer a real-world example of a fundraiser from my experience and how it's different from a program service, when I was an auditor, I used to be part of the team that audited a large food bank. As with most food banks, their primary non-exempt purpose is to lead the effort to eliminate hunger in whatever region they're in. This food bank came up with an idea to generate proceeds by offering raffle tickets at local grocery stores. When you were at the register in one of these grocery stores, you had an option to add on $5 to your overall purchase. And in exchange, you'd get 10 raffle tickets from the food bank. You got 2 raffle tickets per $1 you tacked onto your grocery bill, but you could only get up to 10 each time you were at the register. If you received a raffle ticket, you'd also get an instructional sheet of when the promotion ends and when and how you can check their website to see if your ticket was drawn. The proceeds from the ticket sales obviously went to the food bank, but it didn't specifically advance their mission to eliminate hunger in their respective region. The proceeds were used to fund the nonprofit, of course, but again, this needs to be broken out very specifically. Does the sale of raffle tickets eliminate hunger in their region?
Right, I get it.
No.
I do get it.
At least not like their regular programs that they run, such as where they sell foods to schools in low-income areas at a more affordable cost. That's the difference between a fundraiser and program service.
Okay, I get it. I do get it.
Now that we
So if you fundraised to buy food to give to a black person, let's keep it really simple, that's a program service. Right? We need money to buy food for that black person over there, that's a program service. If it's, we'll sell you a raffle ticket and you can go and do something and we'll give you a raffle prize if you win, and then you take the proceeds from that and buy a meal for the black person, that's fundraising. Yes, I think I've got it.
Understand the differences between what a program service and a fundraiser is, let's discuss how their revenues are calculated and subsequently reported. Like I said earlier, they are both reported and calculated differently within tax forms. That's why they exist.
Okay, imagine you got a little hungry Mexican fellow. Okay, dude, this is it. You got a hungry Mexican fellow. And the Mexican fellow is like, I'm really hungry. I'd like a burrito. Okay? Right? And there's many ways to skin a cat in this situation. Right? There's many ways to skin a armadillo. What do they have in Mexico? I don't fucking know. So you can either say, we would like to have some money in order to purchase some food for that guy over there. So they're giving you money, knowing the money is then immediately buying food which goes to them. That's a program service. If you want to do it a different way, and you want to say, right, what we're going to do is we're going to give that guy some food, and in order to raise funds for that, we're going to do a raffle. You buy a raffle ticket, we'll then take that into our coffers, and we'll use that to buy food for him, but you get a raffle ticket. That's fundraising. Okay, I think I've got it. Hopefully I've got it. If that's wrong, then I'm fucked.
As separate classifications of revenue. You do not just add up everything and come to a conclusion. There are guidelines set out in the Internal Revenue Code by the IRS that we need to follow.
Right, okay. And then you differentiate it, so you differentiate it because the IRS tell you to differentiate it. For what, I mean, I'm sure the IRS have got a reason, which is maybe getting to, but the IRS tell you to do it.
Calculate and report program revenues.
I knew my video was dry, I accepted that while making it. I'm almost shocked that this injection of racism is all it needed to make it entertaining to people. To my audience. Not the general public. Okay? Imagine this guy's like, oh, that's actually quite a good idea. Next time I'll just talk about impoverished black people repeatedly and make that the example. You know, with a hint of disdain in my voice as I do it, and maybe that'll get people interested.
The 990PF states, for each program service activity listed, enter the gross revenue earned for each activity. The expenses for program services must also be detailed out specifically in the 990PF filing, and their instructions state, list the foundation's 4 largest programs as measured by the direct and indirect expenses attributable to each that consist of
the IRS's research revenue streams. It's confusing. So my guess would be that the IRS has got some sort of concern that the money that you get by doing fundraising is dealt with appropriately. Dude, I'm not going to show. Basically, they probably got a concern of one of the two of how it gets spent, or maybe both, and they want to have it separately so they can assess that in a detailed way or something, I guess.
Of the direct active conduct of charitable activities. So program services and their revenues and expenses are easy to understand. We report the gross amount of revenue, and we record and report all expenses related to those program services. However, we just learned that OpenHand doesn't conduct any programs. As a reminder, this is because a program for a private...
Well, okay. Just thinking about it from dealing with accountancy for my own organization, my media empire that I've got here, right? So when you report to the in the UK, the HMRC, when you report your expenditure, right? There's under a certain amount you can just do it as a lump sum, but you have to separate it out into different. So I obviously have got an accountant now, but I know from having done it myself, you have to separate out like travel costs, this cost, that cost, that cost, and I'm guessing because if my business showed like crazy travel costs and I had like half of my revenue being spent as travel costs, doing this for a living, the tax man might be like, why are you spending so much money on travel all the time? That seems fucking outlandish and ridiculous for what you do as a business. And then if they look at it, they might find out that, oh, hang on a sec, you spent money to go to why did you go to the Caribbean? We've got expenditure of flights to the Caribbean here. Why did you spend that money in your business? Oh, there's a streaming event over in the Caribbean, that's why. Something, I don't know. Is that what it is? Is it to make sure that they're you know, able to assess things and pick up for red flags if there's expenditure in one area or another or something like that, I guess. Something along those lines.
Foundation needs to benefit a public charity or other charitable organization. And since Open Hand is the beneficiary of both the golf event and Indieland, it essentially disqualifies those activities as a program service for a private foundation, because they can't be their own beneficiary of their own program. So program revenues and how they're reported and calculated in relation to Open Hand isn't that useful of information. Lastly, how do we calculate and report fundraising revenues? Remember, the 990PF instructions lack the equivalent detail of calculating fundraising revenue, so we have to use the 990 instructions. Per the 990 instructions, we must enter the total amount of contributions received from the fundraising events, which includes, but isn't limited to, dinners, auctions, and other events conducted for the sole or primary purpose of raising funds for the...
Oh! Right, I was thinking of it too simplistically too. The reason fundraising revenue is separated is because the fundraising activity has nothing to do with why they're giving tax-exempt status, right, I see. Because contributions could be like a dinner, right? It could be like, oh, here's a posh dinner out at a restaurant as a gift or something for someone, as some, you know, fundraising thing. We as a business are going to give you something which isn't like a tangible item. It's like some abstract thing of like a dinner. And you could obviously hide levels of like accounting malpractice in order to cover up, you know, certain misbehavior or certain misappropriation or misspending of funds by doing stuff like that, right? And so they want full transparency so they can peek in and go, yep, that all seems above board, no problem. So I can't sell a $10,000 golf package and recognize $10,000 of revenue for it if my purpose is to donate meals to coloured individuals. Right. People of colour is the correct term. But yeah, okay, I get it. You can, yeah. You can absolutely see how people could obfuscate bad behaviour in all of this fucking accounting shit. And this happens in businesses. You hear about this. People are exposed for doing bad accounting and covering shit up, and turns out they're paying out lavish fucking shit for themselves.
The organization's exempt activities. They also provide the following example. An organization holds a dinner, charging $400 per person for the meal. The dinner has a retail value of $160. A person who purchases a ticket is really purchasing the dinner for $160 and making a contribution of $240. The contribution of $240, which is the difference between the buyer's payment and the retail value of the dinner, would be reported on line 1C and again on line 8A.
Right. Yes, it's to scrutinize to make sure people aren't fluffing up figures in a way that benefits them. Right.
Those are references to a general 990 form, and we're actually going to see them in just a little bit. The key term to take away from this paragraph is the portion that represents the contribution, because that's one of potentially two parts of revenue that may be reported. While the term contribution can be considered a very general term, it has a specific meaning.
We're primarily in learning about tax. We're still in the learning about tax stage, okay? I'm fairly certain, he said he's going to talk about this shit for like 30 minutes. At some point, he is going to get to talking about how these guys got it wrong. And then we can really start to fucking lay into Mutahar and Karl for getting things wrong, okay?
Meaning when discussing fundraising revenue. It represents the amount paid above the market retail value of what you're getting in the exchange. This type of contribution is called a quid pro quo contribution. And citing publication 557, it states, a contribution made by a donor in exchange for goods or services is known as a quid pro quo contribution. It also provides the example, if a donor gives you $100 and receives a concert ticket valued at $40, the donor has made a quid pro quo contribution.
Yeah, right. This is the point I was making. I was trying to make this point about the mission thing earlier, right? So you're giving $100, say, to this organization, and you're getting a trip in return, but the value of the trip is less. So you are giving money to the charity on top of that as well, and that needs to be accounted for.
Example, the charitable part of the payment is $60. Fundraising revenue is unique because it's the only revenue stream that may involve reporting two distinct types of income: the charitable contribution portion and the net income from the event after subtracting the contribution amount.
Okay.
This net
Bro, this is gonna... Bro. This is so fucking complicated, dude. There's no way that a layman YouTuber could just look at some accounting information and know all of... Like, look at the detail you have to go into to understand all this shit, right? And you think that... Like, dude... There's no way. Okay. It is... No, that's wrong. It is quite... It's not complicated if you seem to know a bit about this, Dofo Show. Maybe you're in the industry, right? In my opinion, Jerard is cooked. It's been too long and there isn't much coming back for him. I mean, you know, I don't think this is about redeeming Jerard. Like, the problem for me is not that Jerard got... Because Jerard was rightly criticised for some of the stuff he did, yeah. It's about, within that, there's been bad information smuggled in that has been stated without knowledge, expertise, or consulting with someone, I don't think. And people are just accepting of it because it's about a bad person. And it's like, well, you should be able to distinguish that even if the person's done some really bad shit you should criticize, you know, obviously you should have a problem with people giving you bad information. And also, if they're then saying you should contact the authorities about this, it's that fucking serious, well, that's obviously something to question and query as well.
Income would only be reported if the nonprofit specifically hosted or organized the fundraising event. If the nonprofit did not host the fundraising event and instead just received the proceeds passively from a third party, we would only need to report the amount given to them as a contribution and nothing else. We can confirm this is how it should be reported because the 990 instructions state, the organization must report net income from fundraising events as unrelated business revenue. I've already played this clip once before, but I need to do it again because it's relevant to this section. We just learned that Open Hands activities should be classified as fundraisers, and we learned that fundraising income is not reported as a gross amount, so the information given by Mutahar in this clip is incorrect.
If you have, let's say the golf event costs $60,000 to run, right? And it cost, and they made like what, 30,000? So $60,000 to run the event, but they made 30 grand. It wouldn't matter, okay? Because you would still see the $30,000 show up as part of the revenue, right? And the $60,000, if they chose to bill themselves or if they chose to take costs out of the charity, would be reflective. It would show up in the cost sections. Remember, revenue is all the money you've made before you start factoring in, oh shit, it cost me more to run it, so now the revenue that I made, I'm actually going into the loss, okay?
So what's happening, I think, is Mutahar is applying principles of accounting from private businesses to non-profit accounting when there's different rules and different standards and different things that wouldn't intuitively make sense, but do make sense when you consider the IRS's rules on all this shit. Is that what it is?
Let's take a break from Open Hand for a couple of minutes and shift our attention to an entirely different nonprofit. We're going to take a look at a real-world example of what fundraiser revenues look like in a tax filing. The reason that this is important is because this is what's happening in the background of Open Hand's 990 PF filing. Because the IRS...
Yes, and it's more... Yes, accounting and YouTube, it's more than that. So he's taking a basic understanding of accounting principles for businesses, erroneously applying that to non-profit accounting when there's different rules, which means it looks different, and you're not going to understand that unless you know the rules. And then he's stating that there's like crimes being committed, and saying that you should report it to the fucking IRS because apparently he's committing fucking crimes when that doesn't seem to be the case. Yes, let's go. We got it. We nailed it.
IRS asked them to continue filing a 990 PF, they're not required to provide a detailed breakout of their fundraiser activity. So it's important to see what it looks like firsthand to reinforce what I've been talking about for the past 8 minutes. Let's take a look at the Central California Food Bank 990 for their fiscal year of 2022. So we're going to scroll down to something called a Schedule G. This is a schedule that provides all the details related to fundraising activity. If we scroll down to page 2, we can see that under Event 2 that they also host a golf event. This schedule has detailed info that separates out the amounts received in contributions and the gross income of all fundraising events. Remember, contributions represent the amount that exceeded the market retail value of what the participants got in return. So not considering the $25,000 in contributions, we can determine that the net income for this golf event was $16,459. How do we know this? We take the $34,300 of gross income, we deduct $11,808 in rent facility cost, we deduct $6,033 in food and beverage expenses, and that brings us to the net income of $16,459. Where could this other income have come from? It's entirely possible that it came
Right.
from dollars.
Because obviously the
reason
you also need to break it down like this as well is because if you had, like, I'm sure there's probably guidelines that they've got up at fucking IRS HQ. Well, you're saying that's expensive, right? But I don't know how many people were there. I don't know, you know, how many is that per head? Like, obviously, spending money in order to generate more revenue for your charity is fine, right? And it could be that spending that money actually ends up with you making more money in the long run for your charity or whatever. But obviously then if this was some insane figure, right? If this was like some absurd amount of money, it might raise red flags that would generate some sort of investigation to do an audit of your non-profit because you're spending, you know, based on the guidelines, you know, too much in certain areas that causes concern or something, right? But yeah, you know, people are really stupid and they think that like, oh, if you're a non-profit, you can't spend money on anything. But obviously, yes, you can. You can spend money on stuff. It just can't be to excess because the purpose is obviously to, you know, ostensibly support this cause that you're working in the purpose of. And that's why you have the tax exemption stuff, because that's your goal. So then if you start to spend money on things that raises red flags, you start to look into it. Maybe the money's going in a way it shouldn't. Maybe you're hiding, obfuscating certain bad behavior within these kind of figures and stuff. Okay. Yeah.
Of $16,459. Where could this other income have come from? It's entirely possible that it came from things like the sale of raffle tickets, since they sold them before and during the event. They obviously also sold sponsorship packages similar to Open Hand. It's also possible that some of this income is from the sales of merchandise, things like clothing or maybe reusable grocery bags. Not every fundraiser has merchandise made for the particular event. It's very likely that they just had stockpiled inventory of stuff that they bring to these events to also sell.
But how do I make money?
We're gonna-
Hey!
Chud, why is your ferret rescue non-profit spending £20,000 a year on lubricant?
Good question. Thank you for the super chat.
Shift our focus to the column on the far right here with all of the highlights, because this is the cumulative totals for all the fundraisers they hosted. We can see that they had $137,025 of total contributions, and that gets reported on its own revenue line. The gross income from all fundraisers is $147,275, and the total direct expenses are $66,761, bringing the net income total to $80,514. We can bring this amount back to page 1 of their 990 and see that under other revenue, they recorded $80,514, which is all of the net fundraising revenue income. Because the expenses of the fundraisers are already accounted for in this number, we know that they can't be accounted for down here in the total cost or total expense section. Lastly, we can take this information to another page called the Statement of Revenue, and we can tie out each and every amount that we just saw. Here's the $137,000.
Yeah, this is so true. This is so true. Even if you don't understand what's going on, you can clearly see this is a complex situation for a complete layman to make conclusive claims about. Yes, exactly. This is like a layman trying to criticize someone for doing fucking heart surgery. Look, literally watching from the operating theatre, going, oh, you're cutting that bit there. That doesn't look right to me. Listen, there's some blood now. That doesn't look right. You shouldn't be doing that, I don't think. And it's like, you know, you would probably need another surgeon, or at least you need a surgeon next to you to just, you know, fact check and just make sure that you're saying things correct, at least, you know? And the surgeon might be like, oh no, that's actually fairly standard. That's a normal thing. Or if you do raise a concern that's legitimate, they might be like, no, you've got a point there. That is actually the wrong way to do that, and I'm not sure what's going on there. Or something like that, right?
$25 of contributions. If we scroll down to section 8 here, we can see the total gross income of $147,275 minus $66,761 gives us...
I filed my tax return once, probably incorrectly, in the favour of the government, okay? I probably overpaid the government, to be clear. HMRC, don't come knocking on my fucking door, okay? Right? Okay? I've done a tax return, right, for my little fucking piddly content creation business. I'm going to assess the tax return forms, the tax forms and the information for a non-profit organisation when I've got no fucking clue about any of that. I've read a website about it, so I know now. I'm something of a tax expert myself.
The net income, $80,514, which is included in the total revenue amount of $96 million, that can also be tied back to page 1 of the 990.
Oh, bro, oh my god, he's styling. He's styling on Karl Jobst with the fucking GoldenEye music.
If you've gotten this far, congratulations. We are finally at the end of all of the accounting and tax
thank
talk.
Fuck for that, bro.
Let's now take what we've learned in the past half hour and relate it to Karl and Mutahar's
Finally.
accounting calculations. Let's first start with the golf event. One of the troubles I ran into while evaluating Karl and Mutahar's evidence is, because they didn't base their evidence on any tax accounting principles, I basically had to infer what they were trying to say. When I say they didn't base their evidence on tax accounting principles, what I mean is, did you see them cite the tax instructions at all? Did you hear them mention anything that I discussed in this video? Did you hear them discuss the differences of program services and fundraisers? The complications with Open Hands Private Foundation or public charity status? Quid pro quo contributions? Indirect fundraising expenses? Things like that? These are the types of things that must be considered when you're evaluating anything related to nonprofit tax accounting. And because I'd never heard them say anything about these, it's allowed me to come to the conclusion that their research lacked any application of tax accounting. So we basically need to reverse engineer into the tax accounting principles they were implying. I apologize. I know I've played this clip a couple times already.
Oh, here we go
I
again.
have to play the relevant part one last time so we can take the info Mutahar gives us and apply it to the nonprofit tax principles we just learned, since he didn't do this in his investigation.
You would still see the $30,000 show up as part of the revenue, right? And the $60,000, if they chose to bill themselves, or if they chose to take costs out of the charity, would be reflective. It would show up in the cost sections. Remember, revenue is all the money you've made before you start factoring in, oh shit, it cost me more to run it, so now the revenue that I made, I'm actually going into the loss, okay?
So Mutahar is implying here that the golf event should be calculated and reported as a program service, because like we learned earlier, program services report gross revenues and all expenses related to the program service. However, the golf event cannot be considered a program service for OpenHand. This is because, again, a private foundation's programs must benefit a public charity, and we know that they didn't do that because OpenHand was the beneficiary and not any charitable organization.
Right.
Remember when Muta made fun of Momomax with his use of guess what? Karl and Muta both used chat to guess this wrong. I am 500.
Thank you, Poo Poo Doo Doo. Oh, hey Nicholas, how's it going? You got banned from Muta's subreddit. Oh, dude. Yes, oh my god, dude. Remember the Keffel stuff? Remember the Keffel stuff? Oh, it's all transphobia. It's all transphobia, guys. It's all transphobia because of the art on the thumbnail. Right? Now, Muta's audience is making exactly the same fucking arguments. Exactly the same arguments in regards to Mutahar and it being about racism. It's fucking outlandish, bro. If the golf event were hosted pro bono, they would record the in-kind revenue and expense in the books, but it would not be part of their filing, okay?
This can also be confirmed because when we resort to their 990 PF filing, we can see that no program service revenues were recognized. This means that when Mutahar tells you that $55,000 of golf sponsorship revenue should be counted towards 2019, he's incorrect. Since the revenue is not classified as program revenues, it's not reported as a gross total. This is one of the main reasons why Karl and Mutahar think that Openhand is underreporting their revenue, because the revenue figure he's using and the tax accounting principles he's implying are factually incorrect. In order to come to the conclusion that the golf event is a fundraiser, we need to remind ourselves what constitutes a program service for a private foundation. The activity itself must accomplish the non-exempt purpose of the private foundation. Additionally, as if I haven't said this enough, a program service of a private foundation must benefit a public charity. Let's look at the attributes of the golf event and ask whether it accomplishes Openhand's mission to promote research to find a cure for FTD.
The golf part doesn't.
Remember, we need to remove the charitable aspect of the event and determine if the event itself progresses Openhand's mission. Simply put, does a golf event promote research to find a cure for FTD? No, of course not. How does a golf event promote anything related to dementia or dementia research? Remember I said earlier that both program services and fundraisers constitute an exchange transaction? Meaning the participants of the activity get something in return. What do the people who buy a sponsorship package get in return? They get to golf. They get prizes, they get catered meals, and they get to have their companies advertised at the event. How does any of this exchange promote research to find a cure for FTD? Unless the golf event itself involved activities like education about FTD or direct engagement with neurologists or patients, it would not be classified as a program service. We have to also look at it from the perspective of who benefits from the private foundation's program services. We already learned now that private foundations support public charities. Who is the beneficiary of the golf event? It's Openhand. Financially, they receive the proceeds from the event, and general awareness is raised for Openhand. Lastly, and this is the most obvious factor when you apply some critical thought, no private foundation can run a program service in which they are their own beneficiary. That doesn't make sense for a tax-exempt organization. Ironically, there is already a word for when a nonprofit organization has an activity in which they are the beneficiary. It's called a fundraiser. So, let's relate all of this info to Karl and Mutahar's 2019 golf sponsorship calculations. According to Mutahar's video, he asserts that Openhand should have recognized $55,000.
Listen, accounting on YouTube, you seem to have some knowledge of the drama stuff, right? But I learned about World of Warcraft and then later coding to better be able to criticize pirate software. Now I'm learning accounting. I'm learning, non-profit accounting to better criticize Mutahar. It's just, it's very, there's a lot going into my brain. It's like a big sponge just soaking up all this information. A-Log University.
This was based on Mutahar's estimated 4 legacy sponsorship packages and 2 platinum sponsorship packages. I understand that this is an estimation by Mutahar, but it's the same estimation that him and Karl used to come to the conclusions that
I do believe the Khalil family have been stealing tens of thousands of dollars each year from charity donations, and the interesting thing about the money the golf tournament raises...
Bro, that is an insane claim to make with no fucking accounting knowledge, that they're stealing money. That is fucking deranged, bro. That is outrageous. Obvious, dude. Oh my god, dude. They looked at the forms, didn't understand it, and thought, oh, this doesn't look like other accounting. They must be stealing the money. But they didn't realise it's accounted for differently as part of this organisation. That's outrageous, bro.
I do believe the Khalil family have been stealing tens of thousands of dollars each year from charity donations.
Bro, Karl Jobst said they were going to go to jail. He said they were going to go to fucking jail, bro. What on earth? Now, with everything we've learned, you see how fucking outrageous that statement is. Completely false. Complete bullshit.
And the interesting thing about the money the golf tournament raises is that it seems to disappear.
Enough where I can confirm, at least based on how they've priced and what sponsorship tiers they've put out. I have lowballed, and they are still, in the land of underreporting the revenue.
So if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. In short, this assertion that $55,000 of revenue should be reported is incorrect, because that's not how you calculate fundraising revenues. In fact, because Karl and Mutahar aren't properly calculating the golf revenue, their calculations overestimate what the actual revenue should be, which is again why they think Openhand is under-reporting their revenue. We know that his calculations
I got math homework. Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Thank you for the super
don't
chat.
take into consideration how much it costs for 48 players to golf, and potentially the 24 golf carts they'll be riding in. 48 player prizes, 2 catered meals and beverages for each of the 32 people who got the legacy sponsorship package, because there's apparently both a lunch and a dinner reception, so that's 64 meals. The 16 meals for the people who got the platinum sponsorship package, who knows if they get a second meal, and the costs associated with having their logos on banners and course signage. Again, this is indicative of a quid pro quo contribution, where we need to consider what the participants paid for to be able to play in the event. So if you want to calculate their golf fundraiser revenue correctly, you take the amount of cash Openhand received from the sponsorships, and you deduct the market retail value of everything the sponsors received in return. Because we know that they didn't take these into consideration, we know their evidence is incorrect. The fact is, we don't know how much all that shit cost, so we have no idea how much should be reported as revenue for the golf event. Even if...
Bro, he is literally owning... I know it took a while to get here because you had to explain a bunch of stuff. I mean, I was worried because I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, obviously. He's telling me he's an accountant, right? No offense, but obviously people say a lot of shit on the internet, right? But then you've just laid it all out and explained it. So yeah, it took a while to get here. But I mean, if you understood what we've just learned, then yeah, they're obviously completely wrong about this.
That's wonderful. But how do I make
Hey,
money
Nicholas!
off depressed people?
Someone should warn
Thank you for
Karl.
the $5.
Making claims like that without evidence could get him sued.
Well, yeah, I mean, this seems to be exactly why he got fucking raped in court, because he fucking made outlandish claims that he couldn't back up. And this seems to be the same situation. Bro, it is outrageous for him to claim that his family's going to jail and that they were stealing thousands and thousands of dollars from charity when they didn't even know what they were talking about. I'm able to show you my CPA certificate in private if we talk about this. That's enough for me. Your word is your bond, okay? Your word is your bond. Now, we could do something like that if you'd want to. It's up to you, really. You know, there have been people before that have claimed things, and I don't know. But we'll see. We'll talk. I'll send you an email. We can maybe talk more and see what you feel.
If you disagree, and you think that the golf event should be considered a program service, therefore gross proceeds should be reported, it honestly doesn't matter, because that's not how the tax filing was prepared. It was prepared as if they were fundraisers, and we just learned that gross revenues aren't reported for fundraisers. Because it wasn't prepared that way, we know that $55,000 should not be recognized as revenue. This is just in consideration for the year 2019. These concepts have to be applied to every single...
Dude, in fact, this, I've forgotten. One of the reasons I wanted to watch this as well is because there's a further video that Billy Mitchell did about Karl Jobst. And Karl Jobst, obviously, I mean, Billy Mitchell said that Karl Jobst had defamed the completionist. And although obviously it's hidden behind some fair criticism of the completionist, I mean, I don't really like this defamation shit, but he did like say crazy shit about what he'd done, to the point where he's claiming they'd stolen money from charity, which never seemed to be the case.
Year that the golf event was held. So we additionally know that the other years that Karl and Mutahar calculated were also done incorrectly. This is arguably the most egregious aspect of their evidence, because they thought the golf event was where the money was being stolen from. It's entirely possible that no money was stolen. Karl and Mutahar just didn't know how to calculate fundraising revenues the correct way because they failed to research this.
Bro, I don't think that you can even, well, You need a professional. You as a layman, I find it very hard to believe that you could really reasonably discern this. You would just need to go and ask an accountant or fucking, you know. You need, like, do you know what I mean? It's too complex and too intricate, I think, to reasonably assess all of this. And they did look at some stuff, but I think they gave a very cursory inspection of stuff online, and it seems like some of it was probably related as well to like normal accounting practices, which aren't in play for the non-profit stuff.
Oh boy, this section is gonna be rough.
Bro, honestly, even, like, look, right? I filled out my tax return a couple of times. And as the revenue of this all started to increase, and my expenditure, like, you know, going away and taking a fucking, you know, a flight somewhere or something, I was just, and also I was worried I was missing out on things. I was like, am I missing tax breaks that I can claim for? So even for me, I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to let an accountant do it. And it's just so much easier. You know, they literally look at everything and then they go, oh, what's this? What's this? What's this? Right, there's what you got to pay. You know, and it's just, and then you know you've got a level of protection as well, because if they fuck something up, well, that's going to be on them, I think. Right, I'm pretty sure. As long as you've been honest. So, you know, the fact that as a business, a small, tiny business, piddly business like mine, right, that's the better option. You know, the idea that I'd be able to go then look, it's just outrageous. It's totally outrageous. It's hubristic. It's overconfident, you know. And also, it's just so obnoxious that because someone is so in the dirt, what, you can just say they fucking stole from charity without correctly assessing that. It's ridiculous. It's thinking you can tackle this. It is outrageous.
It's going to be tough because we're going to be confronting Jerard's lies, and we know that he definitely lied about Indieland. The other reason this section is going to be difficult is because...
Bro, dude, Nikandros, that's such a good point. Are you telling me Mutahar wasn't a CEO with easy access to accountants who could check this shit properly? I would wager, if you had an accountant that deals with tax shit, like business tax shit, and you ask them about this, right? They would probably say, oh, non-profit's a bit complicated. I tend to focus on this. But maybe I know someone, or, you know, there's other rules. Like, you'd surely be able to fucking get knowledge from them that tells you that it's not as simple as you think it is. Certainly not the simplicity with which Mutahar was describing it. Very good point, Nikandros. Of course, the chief Mutahar A-log would say that.
It's kind of split into three parts. The tax accounting part, the critical thought part, and the stop believing everything you see and read on the internet part. That last section is arguably more important than anything else discussed in this video. Like I said earlier, we know that Indieland should be considered a fundraiser. Just as a reminder, this is because OpenHand is the beneficiary of Indieland, and a program service can't benefit the organization providing the program service. We can also ask ourselves if the Indieland event itself accomplishes OpenHand's mission. Instead of me telling you what Indieland is, let's have Karl tell us.
In 2018, Jerard helped create the Indieland Charity Marathon. This is where indie developers get to come together and showcase their games. It gave a spotlight to lesser-known developers, and it also raised money for a good cause.
Now ask yourself, does the showcase of indie games and giving spotlight to lesser-known developers promote research to find a cure for FTD? No, so it should be considered a fundraiser, and it should be calculated as such. There are hours of footage of Indieland out there, and there isn't any footage that would lead one to believe that what takes place at Indieland promotes research to find a cure for FTD. This means that just because a tweet said they made $109,418 in 2019, that gross amount is not what will be reported as revenue.
Right.
So, Indieland is a fundraiser, but it's not what will be...
Wait, hang on a sec. So... Did they look at this tweet, look at that amount of money, which is obviously like a public, and then they compared it to the thing and said that it didn't match? But then obviously the accounting is always going to look different. Right?
Reported as revenue.
Is that what happened?
So, Indieland is a fundraiser, but it's not a fundraiser in the traditional sense because the contributors and donors aren't really getting anything in return other than entertainment, but that seems impossible to put a value on. So this is not a quid pro quo contribution scenario like the golf event was. In situations like this, the most reasonable way to calculate...
They looked at the tweet, added all their estimations up, and came to the conclusion they were underreporting the revenue. Dude, literally napkin math. I've done a bit of napkin math here, right? And I believe that Jerard's family is going to jail off the back of this. Look, it says minus 40,000 on my napkin. That's fucking 20 years in jail easily.
What the revenue should be
bro.
would be to deduct the direct costs of Indieland and net it against the gross proceeds, and it would all be considered a contribution. This seems to be what happened for Indieland 2019 at least, because even though there were tweets and posts saying that they raised over $100,000, OpenHand only recognized $82,419.19 as revenue. By the way, Jerard definitely got this information from the tax accountant who prepares their filing. There is no way that OpenHand figured this out on their own.
The 2019 Indieland's net proceeds were $82,409.19.
So with Jerard's response, he's kind of telling us that the total direct expenses related to Indieland 2019 were around $27,000. And this is our best guess, also using the tweet stating that there was $109,418 of preliminary earnings. So we just have to kind of guess what those costs were. Did they have to rent the cameras? Did they contract cameramen? Did they pay developers for spotlighting their games? Did they pay for any flights or hotels for the special guests who attended? The 2019 Indieland merchandise they sold, how much did it cost to make? Did they provide any meals or catering? These are essentially impossible to figure out because we don't have any support to help us understand what it costs to run Indieland. Unfortunately, there isn't much else to say about Indieland because we don't know a whole lot. The only thing we know is that it's a fundraiser, and just because a tweet said they had $109,418 of income, that is not exactly reliable evidence. Because Jerard said OpenHand doesn't touch any of the Indieland money, I almost feel like I can't fault either Karl or Mutahar for thinking they should have recognized all $109,000 that they publicly tweeted.
Right, that's fair,
but I also can't ignore that this reasoning kind of misses some important critical thinking.
Yeah. So it's like Jerard made a rod for his own back by saying that, because that's obviously not true. Because there's going to be expenditure which isn't going to the charity, so you shouldn't say that. You should say, after costs, any money raised is going to the charity. But obviously that doesn't sound as good, does it? Right? That doesn't sound as good. But you've got to be real about it.
Honestly, when did Twitter become a reliable source of financial information, or just information in general? The fact is, a lot of info that people find online is not always accurate, or doesn't tell the full story.
Oh, dude! He's kneeling on Karl. Dude, he's kneeling on Karl. Be careful though, Billy was not only able to pressure... Dude, this is the thing that got him in trouble with fucking... cost minus $300,000 or whatever the fuck it was. This one post cost Karl Jobst all the money.
And it really shouldn't be treated as reliable proof. Karl just learned this the hard way in his recent judgment against Billy Mitchell, and I'm kind of surprised that people still don't fully understand this yet. We're actually going to see a few more examples of this in a minute. So maybe this is just me and a product of being in the industry that I'm in, but when I see a tweet like this or a website that says something similar to this, I automatically think that there is no way that that entire amount will be the amount of revenue donated. My brain is wired to think that when it comes to fundraisers, there are always going to be expenses for every fundraiser. There's no doubt about it. It just depends on who foots the bill. Was it OpenHand or was it someone else? This is an important discussion to have because one of the things I've mentioned before throughout this video is how important it is to identify who hosted and organized the fundraiser, because that changes how the revenue is reported. Throughout all of my research, I found...
As a total layman, I would also think that. Yes, that's because people don't understand that you can have reasonable operating costs even as like a non-profit. I mean, non-profits wouldn't work if you couldn't have reasonable operating costs, right? Like, obviously, you've got to, you've got to, like, pay some people, you've got to pay for things, you've got to pay for it. Like, obviously, there's going to be operating costs. And it's about assessing whether, like, and this is why I think transparency is good, because then if you've got an organization that is, in your opinion, spending excessive amounts on things that it shouldn't, then you can decide to not support them and to support one that you think is more frugal in how they spend their money, so that hopefully more money goes to like the you know, the organization. Dude, there was even like a whole big drama with this. Do you remember when charities through like a sponsored-esque org were paying streamers to run charity events? And obviously it was like a bad look because the streamer makes it look like they're doing like a charity event out of the kindness of their heart. But then it turns out they're getting paid by the charity, and people didn't like that fundamental transaction. But then the reality is, if you as a charity can spend $50,000 even on sponsorships and it's a bit grubby, then you could end up getting $200,000 in return. Maybe that's a better return that you're going to get by spending that $50,000 on some leaflets or something, you know? So it is a bit grubby because people are getting, like, you know, money off charity, and it looks like they're doing it for the kindness of the heart, but they're doing it because they're getting paid. I get that part. But from the charity's perspective, it might actually be a good, like, decision to spend that money, you know? The soft giving, I think it was soft giving. It was a soft giving. Bullshit. Completionist was shady as fuck. Get the fuck out of here. Wow. What an incredible engagement with the things we're discussing. Thank you for your comment.
Nothing conclusive. We know that Jerard is the main host of the event, but is he doing it on behalf of OpenHand, or is he doing it on behalf of the team that comprises that one video gamer?
Oh, dude. You're speaking my language. Completionists deserve criticism, and maybe I'm the minority, but I don't think it's a good message to send to be able to falsify other allegations just because the person they're levied against is bad. Yes, exactly.
Which he is also associated with. I found 2 Dexerto articles stating that the TOVG team was responsible for, quote, crafting and running the event since its inception in 2018. However, I found other random articles from Steam and on Tiltify stating that OpenHand hosted the event, it was hosted by the Completionist, or it may have been hosted by FlyQuest as well. Is there really a new organization hosting IndieLand every single year? That seems
off depressed people.
Isn't that the argument that iDubbbz made about Creator Clash? That you have to spend charity money to make more for charity?
Sure, and I don't know what the details of that are. But I mean, you know, he was spending money on like lavish influencer parties with money behind the bar. So I would put that in the category of, you know, particularly Creator Clash 2. Like, when you're hosting a jolly for your mates, is that like reasonable expenditure that definitively is supporting the charity, or is it just like a jolly for your mates? So it, you know, I'm sure that there's maybe some things which money was spent on that were reasonable, but obviously there can be excess to that, right? There can be an excess, and the fact that Creator Clash 2 ended up giving no money to charity, well, that would suggest that there was excessive expenditure, right? Because they didn't have any money to give to the charity at the end of it, didn't it? And it cost them the money. So clearly there was, you know, expenditure in excess of what was necessary because the money didn't end up going to charity. Dude, that, I mean, it's obviously old now. I remember looking at it at the time, and that seemed like the fairly reasonable conclusion. Is that, you know, they bought a hotel, bought a bunch of friends out, did these lavish parties with money behind the bar, and then they ended up giving no money to charity.
Seems odd to me,
well,
at
initially
least.
At least.
A lot of what people find online isn't exactly reliable, and more to the point, financial.
He had after boxing party events with open bars to promote the event, even though he uploads the thing the day after, meaning they wouldn't get much money from it. Yeah, exactly. If there was like some sort of fundraising at the event or something, I don't fucking know. Anyway, the thing is like, yes, obviously there's arguments you can make about this. It's determined on what it's spent on, how it's spent, amounts of money, and if it promotes and supports the event you're trying to do. Like, there's lots of context to this.
Financial information from the internet should never be treated as solid evidence when you're looking into tax discrepancies. So I guess I'm kind of split. I don't want to pile on Karl or Mutahar for thinking that all $109,000 should have been recorded as a donation. They're self-admittedly an ex-speedrunner / ex-online dating coach and a computer scientist. I wouldn't expect them to know how to ask the right questions or where to find the right answers. I'm just conditioned to think that just because a website or something says X amount of money was raised, more often than not, that doesn't mean X amount of money was donated. Karl said in one of his videos that he finds it odd when Jerard just stopped posting about the amount of money that IndieLand raised.
What's also interesting about 2019 is that it's the last year that Indieland, or The Completionist, publicly stated what Indieland had raised in total. From this point on, they make no mention of this, which is strange. You would think a charity event would state how much they raised after it had finished, and they did proudly do this for the first 2 years. But then, as soon as the tax filings became weird, we started hearing nothing.
I get where he's coming from because it does seem like this is something a lot of charities would do, but that's just not often the case. My problem with this statement is it's a stretch. He's basically insinuating that because they stopped making posts or tweets about the money they raised, it lines up with the allegation that they are stealing the money.
Bro.
It's just not a strong correlation. It's a bit exaggerated.
They stopped tweeting about it, so it must mean the money's going in their filthy fucking Turkish pockets. The baklava, the sticky baklava fingers dipping into the baklava pot and pulling out the fucking dollary dues and sticking them in their pot. It's just so ridiculous, dude. It's way too much. It's way too much. That is a suspicion that should lead you to investigate and find out what's going on there and somehow find out about it. Not just conclude, well, it must mean they're stealing the money then.
That's like saying Carl can't defame Billy Mitchell by insinuating that he was partly responsible for Apollo Legends' death, since Billy's credibility with the public was already impaired because he likely cheated at Donkey Kong. Again, I understand why people would think that charities would often post about how much money they raised, but they really often don't. Seriously, how often does anyone waste their time checking to see if a nonprofit made a follow-up...
Yes, Carl has got like such an unearned like superiority aspect, right? And I think that's why, obviously, people loved it when he got fucking absolutely owned in this whole Billy Mitchell thing, because it really pulled the rug out from underneath him. It really made him look stupid and made people realize, oh, maybe this guy isn't quite as clever as we thought he was. And then we get to this and we're like, oh, he was making outlandish claims based on minimal information and evidence. Like, they stopped posting their charity figures, so they must be stealing. I mean, dude, it's just outrageous. Totally outrageous.
Post detailing the amount of money they raised. The only way you can confirm this is by trying to do some research yourself, and I encourage you to do it. Try to look up a fundraiser and see if you can find a follow-up post detailing how much they raised. I'm confident that your results are going to be mixed. You're going to find some that say an exact amount of money they raised. Some will give a follow-up post about the event, thanking people for coming to the event, but not post an amount raised. You'll find some others that don't make a follow-up post whatsoever. Sometimes you'll find that they said they raised X amount of dollars, and then you can take that information and check the nonprofit's tax filing they donated it to. And you'll see that an entirely different number was actually donated or recognized as a contribution. I guess people don't know this, but this is more common than you think. You probably just haven't looked into it before. It's important for people to know that just because a website or a tweet or anything you find online states that X amount of money was raised, that doesn't always mean that's what gets reported as the donation. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. So we're looking at a webpage from the Sunmark Credit Union where it states that they raised a record-breaking $85,000 for their Sunmark Charitable Community Foundation. This was specifically in relation to the annual charity golf tournament that they hold, and this was for the year 2022. When we go to the Sunmark Charitable Community Foundation 2022 990 PF form, we're going to scroll down to the Schedule B, which is the schedule of contributors. When we go to the actual listing, we see that the Sunmark Credit Union only donated $50,000 and not the $85,000 that was raised.
They must be stealing it.
According to the website.
They must be stealing it.
We can also see for the Sunmark Credit Union, their 2023 annual charity golf tournament raised $80,000 for the Sunmark Community Foundation. When we go to the 2023 990 PF filing for the Sunmark Charitable Community Foundation, we're going to go to the Schedule B, the schedule of contributors. When we go to the listing, we're going to see that they actually donated $55,000 of the $80,000 that was raised. This is a webpage from the Bright Bridge Credit Union, who is affiliated with a foundation called the RTN Goodworks Foundation. In 2023, their golf tournament raised more than $35,000. When we go to the RTN GoodWorks Foundation 990 EZ form, we're going to scroll to the Schedule G because, again, this is a golf event that they hosted. We can see that the gross receipts were only $31,382, even though the website says they raised $35,000.
Right.
And just to really fuck with you and reinforce the entire...
Bro! So it's this dude. Cole and fucking Mutahar were saying, yes, they were saying to report these people. They were saying to report to the IRS. But it's a standard practice. It's totally standard. And totally, I'm assuming, totally within all the rules. This is all fine as it should be.
Entire purpose of this section, the net income related to just this golf event was only $12,981. How do we know this? $24,038 of contributions is going to be reported on its own revenue line. The gross income of the golf event was $7,344 minus $17,117 of rent facility costs minus $1,284 of other direct expenses, which means that this golf event actually had a net loss of $11,057. If we add the contributions and the net loss, we come to a total of $12,981 of total revenue just for this golf event, even though the website said they raised $35,000. The actual net income for this golf event is only around 1/3 of what they actually reported on the website, so stop believing everything that you read on the internet. Lastly, we're going to look at the Affinity Federal Credit Union's website, where they said...
So I'm guessing it's legally you can say you raised the money, but that doesn't mean that's what ends up getting put in the charity's pockets. So it's like kind of just legally overstating it within the rules, but it's not really an accurate reflection.
They raised over $200,000 for their 2023 annual golf event. It says specifically that they raised $214,696.25. When we go to the Affinity Foundation's 990 form for the year 2023, we're going to scroll down to the Schedule G because, again...
Bro, you're not going to say like, oh yeah, we raised this much money, but after expenses, it's 1/3 of that actually. Because you just look terrible and people would immediately start being like, well, what have you spent it on? But, you know, I mean, I'm not saying they're running it perfectly. It could be there was unnecessary expenditure. But obviously, you'd have to look at the the devil is in the yes, the devil's in the detail. Exactly. No. This is other companies. This is just what's happening here. Is he's just pointing out how standard practice this is. That there's an amount that's stated on a website, but on the accounting forms it's different because you've got this issue with expenditure and shit that you need to account for.
This was a golf event that they hosted, and see that their gross receipts were actually $219,741, even though the website said they raised only $214,000. See what I mean? This isn't a problem of organizations underreporting their revenue or missing funds or organizations lying about the amount of money they raised. It's a problem of people believing what they see on the internet and treating it as gospel.
Right, yeah.
This is the main issue with Karl and Mutahar's evidence regarding Indieland. Not only does their evidence lack any reasonable application of tax accounting principles, their receipts that they brag about amount to tweets and shit they found on random websites. Those are not receipts by any reasonable metric in the world of tax accounting. These two are levying allegations of embezzlement and missing funds. Okay, these are fucking felonies. The standard of proof needs to be much higher with this investigation than your normal run-of-the-mill online investigation about manipulation in the retro video game market or investigating the conduct of a transgender activist. Unfortunately, this is a downside in the realm of online investigative journalism. Not all information that you need to confirm your accusations will be readily available online. It's actually impossible to investigate tax discrepancies online because the information to substantiate their claims cannot be found online. So while their evidence qualifies as credible evidence in the world of online investigative journalism, it certifiably does not qualify as evidence in the realm of tax accounting or accounting in general, and is not credible enough to confirm allegations of embezzlement or missing money. If you need any proof of this, go research any actual financial crime and see if any of the financial support comes from Twitter or Tiltify. Spoiler alert, it never does.
Yeah, that's such a good point,
The fact
bro.
is this.
Bro, it's all like fucking detailed, like they have like the documents of their accounting and it's like fucking ins and outs and minuses here. It's like fucking insane. And they're not going, oh, well, they said on the website here they raised $100,000. And yet on the form it's only $60,000. So where's the $40,000? I guess we gotta put you in jail now. Fuck, man, that is insane, bro. I know this has been a bit dry, but it is actually very devastating to, you know, this tax part that we're trying to do.
It costs money to conduct a fundraiser. Whoever ends up footing the bill is not going to just eat the entire amount as expenses. The examples of the credit union we just saw, according to them, they raised $165,000 in 2 years, and I believe that they actually raised all that money, but they only donated $105,000 of it. Ultimately, they are a business, and one of their goals is to keep as much of their money as possible. In doing so, they get to earn more interest off the money they loan to people, and people can continue to get the big homes or cars or whatever they want because the credit union has more money to loan them. They're not going to willingly burn $60,000 in 2 years and not at least reimburse themselves for the expenses they paid for to run the event. They wouldn't have been able to donate $105,000 if they didn't spend the $60,000.
Yeah.
While Jerard's repeated dishonesty and lies regarding Indieland are deeply concerning, he has also consistently demonstrated a limited understanding of his own nonprofit. So again, I'm kind of split on how to feel. What I ultimately know is information found online is not always reliable. Specifically, financial information found online is never reliable. Simply put, there is too much information that we don't know to be able to confirm anything related to Indieland. So I'll say this one last time. Stop believing everything you see on the internet.
Dude, he's owning them! He's owning them with music!
Let's give one last listen to the claims made by Karl and Mutahar regarding all of their evidence.
Oh, God.
To understand, if all the money isn't accounted for in a charity when you are raising money for the charity, the government considers that to be illegal. That can be fraudulent. That could be embezzlement. That could be mishandling of funds, which is a severe illegal no-no.
Bro! Hang on, wait! I've just remembered something. Didn't Mutahar say that he thought that Karl Jobst claiming it was embezzlement was too much? Who remembers this and when did it happen? I vividly remember him saying that Karl Jobst saying it was embezzlement was too much. And now here he is in this clip going, well, it could be embezzlement. When did that happen? That happened. I'm sure that happened. During the which recorded call? Oh, during his reaction to the Karl Jobst news, I think he said that Jobst went too far at times. Okay, I could be wrong. Could be wrong. That makes sense, yeah. So, right. So, dude, here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. It's in the video about Manipulation's lawsuit. Please give me the timestamp, and I'll happily look at it. We're not talking on Discord yet. You might have to email it to me or something. Communicate by email. Old school.
What appears on the surface is that there is a pretty glaring discrepancy in the
Embezzlement. I'm going to look it up because I want to be right about this. I'm pretty sure it's when you misappropriate funds for your own benefit. So it would be like taking $10,000 from charity and spending it on a big fuck off TV. In a kind of inappropriate, unauthorized way. Embezzlement is a type of theft where a person in a position of trust misuses assets or money entrusted to them for their own personal gain. There we go. So yes, that's what it is. I was correct. Let's go.
revenue that is reported. It seems that the Open Hand Foundation may be underreporting their actual money.
I do believe the Khalil family have been stealing tens of thousands of dollars each year from charity donations.
Because now we don't even have trustworthy accounting at this moment.
And the interesting thing about the money the golf tournament raises is that it seems to disappear.
In the signature section, it says, under penalties of perjury, I declare that I have examined this return, including accompanying schedule.
Bro, this is outrageous, bro. They don't even know what they're looking at. They don't know anything. And they're just saying all this shit, reading this off. Bro, this is fucking outrageous. This is totally outrageous, man. Gleefully just saying shit that they don't even know is correct, and there's no way they can legitimately claim they know it's correct. And they're so confident as well. Bro, I feel bad. Like, sometimes I talk about stuff I've got no business talking about, but I do try and say, like, I'm a layman, this is my layman's understanding of it, right? I just couldn't imagine sitting there and being so confident about something that you know in your head you don't know enough about. It's like outrageous behavior. And, you know, I think I don't know what their filming schedule was. But I do, you know, to take a punt at it, my thought process here is there a circumstance where they put out their initial coverage and it goes so well and Jerard is getting absolutely fucking lambasted, rightly so for some of the things that he did, like the fucking lies and shit and, you know, misrepresentations, sure. That it's then like, oh, well, you know, let's fucking go ham at this as well then. And then they just start going full-on outlandish ham at, like, the more egregious claims or so. Like, do you know what I mean? In regards to their filming schedule, they put these videos out 2 weeks after their first video. Okay. Obviously, not conclusive. Not conclusive. I do this for a living and research this for 2 months. Right. I reckon it was that. I reckon the first videos went out, they did really well, and Jerard was getting shit on, and then it was like, fucking hell, let's fucking take it one step further. What if he's stealing the money? And I've looked at this, and you know, and it's like, you know, incentivized to just push out as outlandish claims as you can based on your limited understanding of it. You're like, yeah, people want fucking Jerard hate content, and you deliver by making the most outlandish claims you can, but it's based on very flawed, faulty understanding of how this accounting works. Right? That's what it is.
And statements to the best of my knowledge and belief. It is true, correct, and complete. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is a crime. Perjury. Again, I am just doing the most basic third-party accounting that I can do. Oof. I can only imagine what the IRS, the DOJ will find with books this
DOJ! The DOJ! Bro, he's invoking the fucking DOJ. Imagine what the DOJ are going to find once they get the books. This is outrageous. This is totally outrageous.
Fucked. And they are still, in the land of underreporting the revenue.
Let me be perfectly clear. Karl and Mutahar confirmed nothing with their research and evidence into the allegations of embezzlement or missing funds. Period. Frankly, no qualified tax accountant, CPA, or accounting professional would have come to the conclusions that they did based on the evidence that they presented. It simply does not hold up under any professional standard. But Karl and Mutahar aren't tax or accounting professionals, so that kinda checks out. Unless you had direct access to their books, bank statements, and receipts, no one can certifiably claim that they caught anyone pocketing money or claim that money is missing. Unless Karl is holding back some clear, indisputable evidence, something that directly shows funds meant for Open Hand were diverted to Jerard or another member of the Khalil family, then he doesn't have shit. It's not even up for debate. As far as Mutahar goes, he's culpable for performing poor research and not understanding nonprofit tax accounting. I know he said a few times in his coverage that he did the most basic third-party accounting he could, but that's part of the problem with his research. Accounting isn't basic. Tax accounting isn't basic. Nonprofit tax accounting is definitely not basic. Allegations of missing funds require more than just a cursory review. His research should have been far more thorough.
Notice how embezzlement and missing money is generally not found through things like tax filings, pictures online, websites, and Twitter. Fascinating stuff, yeah. Financial statements, bank records, credit card statements, accounting documents. Yeah. Damn.
And this is honestly
Mind
what's
blown.
most disappointing about Mutahar's research and evidence. I've seen a lot of his videos, and I hear him say consistently that he considers himself a good researcher and he won't disseminate information unless it can 100% be verified. But he didn't do that here, not even close.
Dude, that is so... Bro, he's got this thing where he won't even trust a screenshot, and he says, I need to be able to scroll through the screenshot on the Discord fucking client once refreshed so I can check no one's fucked with it. That's his standard for, like, not believing a screenshot. Yet for this, he's just done a bit of napkin math and is making these claims that the DOJ is going to potentially find all sorts of shit when they get hold of their fucking accounting. It's ridiculous.
This is just my opinion, but it seems like Mutahar realized this at a certain point too, and when he realized he didn't have what he needed to confirm his theories, he just made something up and pointed the finger at Openhand for why that was. We'll talk about that shortly. At the beginning of this video, I said my approach was to examine the evidence presented by Karl and Mutahar and come to some sort of conclusion on all of it. In terms of the golf event, their accounting research, evidence, and calculations were shit. Their research and evidence was lackluster, which isn't surprising given that their research appears to have relied largely on looking at pictures online and Google searches. Their accounting evidence failed to incorporate any fundamental nonprofit tax principles, and it clearly demonstrates that they did little to no research on this. Karl mentioned in one of his videos that something like fraud is really hard to prove.
I'm not sure why they brought up the IRS, but this assumes the IRS is some kind of omnipresent being that immediately detects fraud the moment it happens and intervenes. This notion is simply untrue. Many crimes, especially fraud, go undetected, and unless you do something especially egregious on your filings, nothing will be flagged to the IRS.
I agree with this wholeheartedly, which is kind of why I find it odd that these two internet accountants can somehow believe that they can prove money was missing or embezzled because of looking at photos online and punching numbers in a calculator. Regarding Indieland...
Bro, if it were that easy, the IRS would have people looking at this shit on the internet and figuring it out and getting the companies that are doing this. Bro, this is just a total... Dude, it's such a good video because... it's dishing out the criticism, rightly, of the bullshit that fucking Jerard was saying, but also just pointing out what a mistake it is to just accept what you're told. And dude, the internet accountant thing, man, it is so fucking true as well. Internet accountants.
I'll give the benefit of the doubt to them and assume they were misled by Jerard, who repeatedly claimed, falsely, that they never touched the funds generated by Indieland. However, their research, evidence, and receipts amounted to tweets and posts online. If you're turning to Twitter for credible information, then we're dealing with a whole different kind of fucking problem. In fact, Mutahar himself admitted something about Twitter that I found interesting.
But what was really wild to me was how some of the individuals, at least on Twitter, and again, I don't use Twitter as an intelligent metric.
Twitter may not be a reliable source of intelligent information, yet it was somehow considered sufficient to support allegations of embezzlement or missing funds. It's quite the contradiction, if you ask me. When this story came out, and we only knew about the money that hadn't been donated, Jerard and Openhand's conduct needed to be called out. I think we're all glad that it was. I think we're all glad that they finally donated the money. From here on out, I'm sure everyone who spends their life online will keep a watchful eye on them. However, I just can't figure out why Karl or Mutahar decided to take it to the next level and accuse them of stealing money or missing funds.
Because the incentive for views and wanting to, like, throw red meat to the audience. That's why. That's exactly what it is. Oh, that did well. Where else can we get? Oh, look at this. It looks a bit like maybe he's stolen. Let's fucking run with it.
People really think that you can substantiate those claims based off the random shit you find on the internet? Mutahar apparently faced some heat from people who blamed him for performing, quote, bad math?
I really did attempt my very best at trying to identify the possible revenue sources for that lowballed math that I did. You can say bad math, but again, I am lowballing based on what I can reasonably deduce.
It's not bad math, Mutahar. It's bad accounting and a bad understanding of tax accounting. Math is an element of accounting, yeah, but it's a very small aspect of it. Any 5th grader can punch some numbers into a calculator. It doesn't make them ready to become a tax accountant. I don't doubt that Karl and Mutahar tried their best in researching this, but just because you tried your best doesn't mean you did well at all. Not only were their tax calculations done incorrectly, not only was their evidence not credible, I'm of the opinion that their overall efforts that they employed to research the claims of embezzlement and missing money was shit. I just spent the last 40 minutes explaining to you that they put in zero effort to actually investigate how to report nonprofit revenues in a tax form. There are several other examples where Karl and Mutahar either didn't fact-check what they were saying or didn't really understand what they were looking at. So instead of digging deeper, they just speculated and added more doubt to OpenHand's already shady behavior. Karl and Mutahar were already called out by some people regarding one of the mistakes in their investigation about the tax filings lacking a signature.
Oh, is this the Moon drama? Thank you for the $2. Thank you. Moon made a video criticizing, I think, Karl, and he got absolutely crucified for it.
Then he in this video mentions the point of electronic signatures as if that was a massive point in the original videos anyways. It wasn't.
Don't let Mutahar fool you here. Whether it was a big or little point is irrelevant. If it wasn't a major point, then why was it part of their videos in the first place? Think about it. Karl and Mutahar are trying to tell you a story of deception and are questioning the legality of OpenHand's conduct. These other small problems that they bring up with OpenHand help bolster their larger claims. Mutahar is missing the bigger picture here. It's their lack of effort to fact-check their own assertions they made in their own videos. Nobody asked Karl and Mutahar to make a video about embezzlement or missing funds. They chose to do that. The viewers are trusting Karl and Mutahar to tell them factual information throughout their coverage. Rather than Mutahar take responsibility for the mistake, he just shrugs it off and acts like it was never really that important to.
Dude, that's very true.
Of these credible nice guys then to lying lol cows.
Thank you, Grill TV, for the $5. Appreciate that.
Begin with, so it's like it doesn't even matter that they got it wrong. Ironically, in this video, Mutahar actually points out a second oversight he and Karl made in their original investigation.
Now, in this video, I just want to stress for the record, when it came to the golf tournament, some of the money that was pledged was apparently by Jerard and their own statements could have been rolled over into following years, right? Which absolutely is something that could happen, and I'm glad they clarified it.
What Mutahar is referring to here is something called an accounting methodology. In short, an accounting methodology helps determine when an organization should be recognizing revenue and expenses. OpenHand operates under one called the cash basis, which means that they record revenues and expenses when they directly receive money or pay the money out. This means that money owed from a prior year can be paid and counted as revenue in the current year. Mutahar mentioned that he's glad that they finally clarified this. The problem with this statement is OpenHand never actually needed to clarify this because it's explicitly stated on the first page of every single one of their tax returns. This information was always out there. Karl and Mutahar just don't know where to look for it. Rather than Mutahar take responsibility for not noticing this before or acknowledging how this information might have challenged his and Karl's initial claims, he deflects it entirely, fabricates a lie, and shifts the blame onto OpenHand. Let's listen to the clip in full.
That's so outlandish. Oh, well, they clarified that. That's good. When it wasn't something they needed to clarify. It's not on them to clarify it. It's something you ought to know if you're investigating this. I mean, I don't really like this lawsuit shit, but also it's like, dude, I don't think he wants to. I mean, dude, you know, maybe here. I mean, it is pretty outrageous to claim he's committing embezzlement when he's not.
Now, in this video, I just want to stress for the record, when it came to the golf tournament, some of the money that was pledged was apparently by Jerard and their own statements could have been rolled over into following years, right? Which absolutely is something that could happen, and I'm glad
dude. Another aspect to this too, yeah. The situation is so unfair, right? Jerard was angry in his response. And I feel like people really hung on that. They really got on that. The fact he was so angry and stuff like that, right? And that was after the tax stuff was this stuff was discussed. And I think that people thought it was unreasonable that he was talking about like lawsuit aspects and things. When actually, when you hear it out, it's actually not that crazy. It's like you have to really just think, oh, he's a liar, he's full of shit. No, well, no, because there are some things they said that were outlandish and outrageous, and it's fine to be angry about that. Jerard did like dig his own grave by the way he handled it and lying and shit, whatever, right? Sure. But it's like the nuance was really lacking there. And the nuance has to be, well, he's right to feel justified in being angry about being accused of stealing charity money off the back of them not understanding accounting practices, as we're finding out here, you know?
Clarified it. Again, the fact that he's out here mentioning numbers down to the penny shows that there is a QuickBooks, some accounting that's present. So I would be very much like down to see these actual statements. A bank statement, an expense sheet. If you're itemizing and you're down to the dollar, clearly you have this information. And I just want to see it. I think most people want to see it. And you're a public charity, you should be showing it. It shouldn't be pried from your hands.
Mutahar actually made several other statements like this throughout his coverage.
You should at least show a bank statement. Show a bank statement. So I'm here to offer my response to Jerard's response with receipts, something that I personally believe Jerard did not do at all in his video. I never saw one bank statement, never saw one evidence of money flow. And you have the books, you have the accounting. Just, again, if you could show us the receipts. Why don't you show us an actual accounting of it? Why don't you show us the actual receipt on the video? But I am reasonably suspicious about the reported revenues, and that's something that can easily be rectified had you provided a receipt.
Yeah, also, the other thing as well is one would assume that they're doing it through an accountant. And an accountant bears some brunt of the... Like, if an accountant fucks something up, that's on them. Right? If I lie to my accountant and I say something bullshit about an expenditure and it gets found out, that's on me. But if they fuck something up and how they declare something, well, that is on their shoulders, right? So I don't think an accountant is going to, like, if their accountant is doing it, you can generally assume that they're probably doing it correctly, unless it's a rare case with a totally fraudulent freak who's going to like stuff money in your pocket and shit like that, right? Because they've got like their own liability for this stuff that they need to be aware of, and they could be like criminally fucking fucked if they do something that's illegal. Like Jerard is not doing this shit himself. I mean, I don't know 100%, but I would assume that it's likely an accountant that's doing it, and they're probably above board.
As they are a public charity, they should give an exact dollar amount. These books should not be pried from their hands. They should be opened in their hands, so to speak.
I know, yeah, dude, Q, that's a good point, isn't it? Right? Well, I tell you what, Mutahar, if that's your standard, why don't you publicly show everyone the evidence that you're an engineer then? Shouldn't be that big a deal, right? If Jerard could be expected to show all of his fucking expenditure and bank statements, surely you could be expected to provide evidence that you're an engineer to back up the claim that you made repeatedly in your videos, no? Like, bro, it works, dude. It works both ways, man. It works both fucking ways.
Mutahar is insinuating here that nonprofits are basically required to show the public their books, including things like bank statements and receipts whenever they're requested. That is a flat-out lie, and I don't know where he got this from or why he made it up. What we're looking at right now is a document sourced directly from the IRS website, and it's a document that essentially covers public disclosure. This document will tell us what information nonprofits are required to make available to the public. If we scroll down to section 5 right here, we can actually see some examples of what a nonprofit is required to disclose to the public. Things like annual returns for 3 years after the due date, all Form 990 schedules except portions of Schedule B, your application for exemption.
It would actually be, dude, right? I mean, I don't have to show anything publicly because I'm classified as a sole trader, basically. Nothing to do with feet. Soul is in alone, right? But it's like, I know that if you're a limited company, you have to provide accounting information. But obviously you don't have to provide your bank statements and shit of your business. And also, it would be an incredibly difficult and unreasonable because what people would do is they go over the bank statements and they go, "Ooh, you spent $100 on this. What's all that about?" And they wouldn't understand or know the context of certain things. And they'd make assumptions and they'd make judgments in regards to what you're spending money on without knowing a single thing about your fucking non-profit organization, business, whatever, you know? So, no, I don't think that you should necessarily have to provide bank statements. That's probably way too much of information. And also, yeah, you wouldn't even know what to do with the bank statement anyway. Dude, there's some transactions, right, that are quite, they're kind of limited in what they say on the statement. And then obviously you would normally have access to an invoice. So for example, you know, I've purchased stuff from Amazon for the purposes of my business here, right? But it says Amazon. It says Amazon £30 on my fucking bank statement. And obviously looking at the bank statement, you're not going to know what that is. And then it's like, well, what was that for? Do you have an invoice for that? And then normally you'd provide an invoice and then you'd know, oh, it's for that. So without that, you'd need so much more information than just a bank statement in order to, you know, understand what it is. So even if it was necessary, which is not, it still is not a good way of determining, how the money has been spent and if it's been spent correctly. Thank you for the super chats.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yes, I've got a business account, yes.
Off depressed people.
I've got a business account.
became a member.
When I first started doing this, I had no fucking idea what I was doing.
Okay, that's
right.
wonderful.
So everything was just going into my personal account, and it was
Conk3D
very
became
unmanageable.
a member.
Sounds ridiculous looking back now.
Okay, that's
But
wonderful.
yeah, it didn't take too long until I realised, yeah, this is stupid. I need to actually
Crystal
set up
became a
a
member.
business account. Because the thing is, you know, unless you're fucking in the know about it, you don't really conceptualize. You know, Twitch is paying you money.
Iron Hand Guts became
You don't
a member.
conceptualize that as a revenue stream for your business. You just think, oh, Twitch are paying me. You think Twitch are paying me money? I'm basically like an employee, so I'm just getting paid for it. No.
Year of the
You need
Snatch
to put it
became
into a business
member.
account so it can be accounted properly, and then you pay yourself out the business account. So you've got a paper trail of payments and stuff, you know? Well, the way I'm in a weird position. The way my thing works is that because I'm a sole trader, any profit after expenditure I have to pay tax on, right? So basically I'm in a situation where if I earn too much money, I could end up getting absolutely fucking raped tax-wise, essentially, to put it bluntly, right? But if you're a limited company, you can pay yourself in a different way and you reduce your tax liability. I can reinvest in the business, sure, but the point is you can do it where you pay yourself a salary out of your business, but then you can only pay yourself a certain amount for it to be tax efficient. And then if you pay yourself over that, you pay more than you would pay as a sole trader at the same amount. But then if you make too much money, you either need to reinvest it in your business in some way, or you then end up paying ridiculous amounts of tax on it. So yeah, it's a bit complicated. I'm still trying to figure out the best thing to do. But I've got an accountant, they're very good. And they said they'll help me out, you know, in a few months and figure out what's going to be best. But yeah. Listen, yeah, exactly, dude. I would not have known that unless I spoke to a fucking accountant. I understood the idea of paying yourself and it could be more tax efficient. But you need to speak to an accountant to get the fucking detail of it. Otherwise, you're not going to fucking know. You can't get it from online.
And all supporting documents, as well as the IRS determination letter that shows your organization has a tax-exempt status. This document will also tell you things that you are not required to share. And if you just look at the first sentence here, no, you're not required to share all business documents. So again, no idea where this came from. Okay, a little post-editing adjustment here. It's not fair for me to say that Mutahar was explicitly lying here. I've never had a conversation with him, so I can't convey that confidently. It is, however, very possible that Mutahar just thought this was correct, and instead of researching it further, just stated it as a fact. The latter seems like a likely explanation, especially given that other aspects of his research also show little evidence of a thorough investigation. I understand that this may upset some people, because for some reason people think that they're just entitled to any information whenever they ask for it, and then if you don't provide it, you must be hiding something.
Dude.
The fact is,
Yes,
all of
that's
this
so
relevant
true.
information has already been shown to the tax preparer, who, by the way, has been a licensed CPA for over 40 fucking years.
There we go.
They know more
There we
about
go.
tax accounting than Karl or Mutahar will ever learn sitting in front of their computer.
Bro.
This is why we have licensed professionals in almost every single field, so you can let a professional who knows what they're doing take care of it for you. It's exactly why you shouldn't let an ex-speedrunner / ex-online dating coach and a computer scientist prepare your taxes for you, because they may get lost in what they're doing and think you're embezzling money or have missing funds. While I recognize that these claims were made explicitly by Mutahar, I have no doubt that Karl felt emboldened to accuse Jerard of embezzlement and suggest that OpenHand was misappropriating funds, largely because of how confidently Mutahar presented this false information. I can't stress this enough. This shit is pervasive across Karl and Mutahar's research into the allegations of embezzlement and missing funds.
It's outrageous when you know it all now. Dude, I am so, like, I'm going to throat myself for a sec on stream, okay? You've heard me say this before. I didn't know the detail. I had a bad feeling about some of this stuff, right? I didn't say that, like, the completionist was innocent by any means. But I definitely was a bit like, okay, this embezzlement stuff sounds kind of wild. And when you've got it laid out now, it's just, it hits so hard of like, yeah, this is obviously outlandish when you consider the detail of this. And when you consider how little they had to make these claims as well, you know? Fuck, man. And dude, some people in chat didn't like it, remember? Dofo, I think, was one. Remember Dofo was kicking off. Where's Dofo now? Eh? What happened to Dofo? Dofo, where are you? I remember. You one-guyed me back then and I remember it. What they could have done is they could have said, he didn't give the money to charity and it's been sat in an account for years. Oh, you're in the middle of something. Okay, fair enough. You know, fine. Jerard is seemingly being dishonest in the things he said here. Fine, right? I've taken a cursory look as a layman at the accounting. To be honest, I don't really understand it. But on a cursory inspection, it looks like maybe there's some issues. And then maybe go speak to a fucking accountant that's expert in this and ask them. Right? And get information. And then you quickly find out, no, you don't understand it, it's complicated. And you'd be like, okay, well, that's not worth considering. I spoke to someone and it turns out it's not what I thought it was. And it's a bit more complicated. But I don't really know enough to talk about it. But I was wrong about that. But instead they just went full bore, full steam ahead. Yes, I'm going to fucking say that it's embezzlement and the worst possible things.
There are other examples of misleading statements that they made that are easily fact-checkable if you know what you're doing and you know where to look. But they don't. They purposely did not research certain things so they can speculate and cast more doubt on the legality of OpenHand's conduct. Let's just take a look at another example right now.
Oh no. Uh-oh.
I didn't talk much about the Suzuki Foundation in this video, and that's mostly because I was trying to focus on the evidence of embezzlement or missing money regarding the golf
Well, actually,
event.
yeah, that's a good point as well, because people could have learnt things erroneously from that video and used that to conclude that other organisations were doing something nefarious because of these discrepancies, which are explained by the specific complicated accounting practices that are engaged in. So it's not to say that, like, this is essential to point out, but it's just to say that, like, this is a consequence is potentially people are misinformed that leads to them coming to bad conclusions about other situations too.
and indie land. However, Mutahar said something really strange when he was looking into the contribution that they make to OpenHand. In Mutahar's videos, he consistently classifies the money they give as a grant.
The grants from Jamie Lee Curtis.
The clip in question is kind of long, and this video is already long enough, so I'm going to post it in the background and just talk over it. If you want to listen to yourself, the video title is on the screen. In this section, he's reviewing the donation the Syzygy Foundation makes to OpenHand, and he feels like he's made a...
What's another interesting catch for me over here is...
This entire segment is him looking into whether a private foundation, like the Syzygy Foundation, can give a grant to another private foundation. My issue with his so-called interesting catch is how he handled it. It not only exposes the weakness of his investigative work, but also highlights his bias throughout the entire process. By the end of this clip, he questions the legality of whether OpenHand can accept a grant from another private foundation.
Representing themselves on filing as another private organization. It's actually an interesting catch, and I want to know what the legality around that necessarily is.
I don't want to go on for too long about...
An interesting catch according to who? You with no knowledge of accounting. Oh, this is an interesting catch, isn't it? Look, there's a number here and there's a number there. Interesting catch, guys. This organisation gave another organisation money, and I don't know about the legality of it because I know nothing about this. I've really got a good catch here.
This, but a grant is so inherently complex and it requires a ridiculous amount of reporting and paperwork. Grants are essentially funds given from one entity to another to fund a very particular project. There are a lot of different types of grants, and they are all very complex, and they must adhere to very strict compliance regulations. Again, grants are super complicating, and they're the exact opposite of a contribution. A contribution is just one person or organization giving another organization a donation of cash or another asset. There is often no middleman. It's just a simple one-way transaction. Not all the time. Sometimes there are things like PayPal or a broker that facilitate a transaction, but they really just act as intermediaries. Want to know something interesting about the Syzygy Foundation money they give to OpenHand? It's not a grant at all. It's a contribution, and we can confirm this with little to no effort.
Oh no.
If I go to the 2022 990PF filing of the Syzygy Foundation, I can find the exact same contribution that Mutahar found in the video. If I scroll up one entire page to the section called Supplementary Information, I can see this information in box 2 regarding contribution, grants, gifts, loans, scholarship, etc. programs. And the box says, check here if the foundation only makes contributions to pre-selected charitable organizations and does not accept unsolicited requests for funds. If the foundation makes gifts, grants, etc. to individuals or organizations under other conditions, complete items to A, B, C, and D below. We can see that they obviously checked the box up here and they did not fill out the lower information. So this is a contribution and it's not a grant. All Mutahar had to do was scroll up one page on the form that he was already looking at, and he could have found this information. But I have a slight feeling that Mutahar doesn't know what he's looking at. Or
Oh my god, it was the most basic thing that anyone with a passing knowledge of this would know, and he just didn't fucking... Oh my god, bro. Great research. Great research, bro. Great research. Well done.
Looking for, so he missed it. Instead of looking into this himself or asking a professional, he chose to freely speculate and cast more doubt on the legality of OpenHand's practices, thereby reinforcing a narrative already biased in favor of the evidence he's found. This is actually indicative of something called a confirmation bias. A confirmation bias refers to the tendency to seek out, interpret, or prioritize information that supports one's pre-existing beliefs while disregarding or downplaying evidence that may contradict it. This was never an interesting catch by Mutahar. I'm not bothered by the error. Mutahar is a self-proclaimed computer scientist. I wouldn't expect him to know this stuff.
Yes. He is self-proclaimed. That is true, because it might be that it's all bullshit.
Or where to look to find answers on it. Again, it's this very clear lack of effort to investigate something he's
It's
unfamiliar
all good,
with.
man. Obviously,
so he chooses to not.
You didn't know all this Mutahar stuff was going to come out, but it actually fits quite nicely that you say self-proclaimed. So people are not going to be able to tell the difference. They might think you're even referencing it.
Not investigate it, speculate on it, and cast more doubt on OpenHand's conduct. Despite the fact that throughout his coverage, Mutahar kept telling everyone that he wasn't trying to speculate on certain things.
So I'm not going to start assuming things, okay? Because clearly I'm not here to speculate. But again, I'm not here to speculate.
Their research and evidence into the claims of embezzlement and missing funds is not coming from a place of honest research, because they honestly didn't research a whole lot. They assumed that they knew what they were doing and they ran with it. Karl and Mutahar may claim that their small errors they made aren't big points in their investigation as a whole, but that's just a bullshit response. They're the ones who said it. They made it part of their videos. They're the ones who brought it up. They're the ones who confidently asserted their claims as fact. If they got so many easily verifiable facts wrong, it raises serious questions about what else they may have misrepresented.
And as unfortunate as this situation is, it does need to be called out, and there do need to be repercussions.
Alright,
I pose these questions to you in closing. It's been a year and a half since these allegations were made by Karl and Mutahar. If Jerard was caught embezzling money, how come we haven't heard anything about this since then? If OpenHand was caught pocketing money from the golf event, then how the hell are they still able to host golf events that benefit OpenHand? If there was any trace of missing money or unaccounted money, why are they currently in good standing with the IRS? If you don't believe that last statement, you can fact check it yourself. Call the IRS and ask them about OpenHand. Be prepared to give them your name and information. I also want to end with a short blurb about OpenHand as an organization. They very clearly failed the public in many ways, not just in their false statements regarding the organizations they worked with, not just failing to donate the money in a timely manner, but they clearly lacked governance and oversight of the entire organization, which is the bare minimum that they owed to anyone who made a donation to their foundation or who spread goodwill in their direction. That isn't solely Jerard's fault, as he's just one of the 5 board members. All board members bear that responsibility. With that being said, OpenHand as a nonprofit seems in limbo to me. They very clearly want to exist as a private foundation, but they very clearly operate like a public charity, and you just can't have that. When I spoke to the IRS about OpenHand, they informed me that they are in good standings. However, I could not get a clear answer on any recent tax filings. For those who don't know, if your organization fails to file a return for 3 consecutive years, your status as a tax-exempt organization gets revoked. I couldn't locate or gain access to a 2023 filing anywhere, and I tried hard to look for that shit. Their tax filing always seems to be submitted at the end of Q3 or within Q4 of the following year, so we'll see near the end of 2025 if there was a 2024 return done. If we don't see a 2024 return, I think it's very possible that OpenHand Foundation will cease to exist come 2026, and maybe that's deserved. However, it's important to note that if that does happen, they still have a war chest of cash sitting around and they're running golf events in 2025, so hopefully we see that money get donated. Undoubtedly, there are aspects of OpenHand and Jerard's conduct that needed to be called out and addressed. With that being said, I really can't understand why Karl and Mutahar took it to another level to allege that money was being embezzled or was missing. They very clearly did a poor job of researching these allegations and presented misinformation and factually incorrect information along the way. Unfortunately, no one can reverse the sands of time and take any of it back. There is no fixing this. As far as we know, this is now in the hands of the IRS. We will all know within due time whether these allegations carried any weight or not. And I'm sure some video essayist years from now will make an hours-long documentary covering the saga in its entirety. Thank you for watching. This video only covered a handful of information regarding OpenHand, as well as only addressing some aspects of Karl and Mutahar's investigation. There are honestly numerous other topics we could explore and many different directions this conversation could take. For example, I do have some disagreements with how OpenHand's tax form has been prepared, but that's the responsibility of the tax preparer and doesn't really have to do with OpenHand. With that being said, none of my disagreements would pay favor to the idea that money is being embezzled or has gone missing. It's just kind of laziness in the preparation. I also originally had a 15-minute section going over cash basis accounting and how easy it would be to actually catch OpenHand embezzling money because they follow that accounting method. But this video has to come to an end at some point, and this is it. Thanks again if you've made it this far. Hope you learned a thing or two.
Dude. I mean, I obviously, you know, I wasn't 100% when I first got the email. I was kind of weighing it up and like, you know, an hour and a half video. Seems like a very dry, informative video. And also I was just like, are the people ready for this? Are you ready to have your conception about your understanding of these events challenged in any way? But I think this recent Mutahar stuff has really put people over the precipice where they're ready to maybe hear that perhaps they didn't get everything right about the completionist. Yeah, that was great. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed watching that. Yeah. Carrollton and YouTube, great job.